outfit your business with a free product tour at netsuite.com/radar. Schedule your free product tour right now at netsuite.com/radar.
Clay's cleaning service has a spotless reputation.
Take care of the windows. Hello, this is Clay.
But his business operations could use a light dusting.
I had you scheduled for next week. I'll just check here. No, absolutely. We will be there tomorrow.
Indeed can help him hire the people he needs.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. When you sponsor a job, you immediately get your short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job criteria. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
It's crunchy!
Creamy!
Sweet.
Salty.
Nature Valley sweet and salty peanut bars, bursting with crunchy peanuts, dipped in creamy nut butter coating.
Delicious.
Nature Valley.
South Jersey's play-by-play home for the Eagles,
Touchdown!
Sixers, and Flyers.
He scored!
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Mike Gill.
It is a Monday edition of the Sports Bash, and it starts right now. What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Hennings producing today's show. You out there on a Monday. It's draft week. I have mixed feelings about it being draft week. While I'm I'm highly anticipating what the selection by the Philadelphia Eagles and others will be. I love the draft in general. So I'm interested in everybody's draft process and selection. I certainly want to see what Howie Roseman and the Eagles front office do with the Philadelphia Eagles pick, but it'll be bittersweet. You know, the one good thing about the Eagles being a wretched franchise in the 2020 season is the draft was a lot more interesting than it's been in the last couple of years. I mean, quite frankly, the NFL draft has not been as topical for us because the Eagles have been so good, you know, winning the Super Bowl. They didn't have a good pick. It's hard to kind of talk about the draft when your team is drafting, 32nd. And the Eagles actually traded out that year, if you remember, and didn't have a first-round pick. That's, they drafted Dallas Goedert. So, pick number 6 back to 12, and now where? Well, this week will be filled with speculation. You remember on Friday, we talked about the BS meter. We're going to have the high level of BS meter this week. What's out there, what will be put out there, the breadcrumbs that will kind of be dropped across the way to get us from Monday to Thursday. But NFL Draft Week is here. And, of course, the BS mill, I guess you could call it. It's not the rumor mill. This is the BS mill. And if you think about the latest buzz around this team, Todd McShay today over at ESPN.com, he put out kind of like what he's hearing the week leading up. And this is what we're talking about. What I'm hearing the week leading up is the BS that the front offices want to put out there on the final week leading up to the draft. So what he says he's hearing in terms of tied to Philadelphia is that, quote, a lot of people around the league believe the Eagles could be a wild card in the first round. I don't need Todd McShay to tell me that the Eagles are going to be a wild card, but obviously that's a huge possibility. They pick 12. They have a lot of assets. They have 11 picks. They certainly can move all over the place. He says, quote, the Eagles are apparently tossing out feelers to quarterback-needy teams that might want to move up to number 12 if one of the top 5 quarterbacks is still on the board when the Eagles turn to the draft. It's something I've been saying on this show for a month, is that once the Eagles made the trade, what do? You take calls. You call every team that needs a quarterback. I said it all last week. I'm calling Chicago. I'm calling Pittsburgh. I'm calling Washington. New Orleans. Obviously, New England. If you need a quarterback, I'm on the phone with you. So I would imagine that Howie Roseman has been on the phone with all of those teams already. And even if you don't need a quarterback, anybody picking behind them, I have no doubt in my mind that Howie Roseman, many of you think he's not very smart. He is making every call to try to get more picks in next year's draft because he knows that next year's draft is a much more, in a inexact science, that science is much more exact than this one will be. And he has 11 picks this year. He would like some of those 11 picks to occur next year. So if he can move back and add more picks in next year's draft, I guarantee that would be what he would do. He goes on to say, quote, but I've also heard that there's some interest in Justin Fields within the organization. But logistically, that's usually the part of the trade back smoke screen. If you want a team to move up, you'll, of course, toss it out there that you might be interested in a quarterback as well. Pay close attention to what Philadelphia does here. It could get interesting. That's from Todd McShay over at ESPN.com today. Look, the Eagles aren't taking a quarterback, and if they do, Howie Roseman will be crucified by me on the air on Friday. If they take a quarterback, that would be asinine. Now, if the Eagles trade back and Howie Roseman adds another first-round pick in next year's draft, you know that statue they have out there at Nick Foles? You might want to put another one up next to it. If they can get a fourth first-round pick in next year's draft. And there's a couple teams that could happen with. One of them we talked about, the Chicago Bears, right? The Chicago Bears draft at 20. They absolutely need a quarterback, whether they tell you Andy Dalton's their quarterback or not. That's a different situation than what Philadelphia has. Philadelphia drafted a quarterback in the second round. They signed Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton, yeah, they tweeted out QB1. That was cute until there's a quarterback still on the board at 12 and Philadelphia's on the clock. Chicago makes a phone call and says, hey, you're at 12. We're at 20. There's a quarterback there. We like him. We need him. What do we need? What do you need? If you're Philadelphia, your answer is, I need your first-round pick next year. That's what I need. You want to move up 8 spots in this year's draft to take this quarterback that's on the board right now? That's what I want. And if I don't get it, have fun with Andy Dalton. You throw in their face as much as possible that Andy Dalton's your quarterback, and if you want that, fine. Otherwise, I'll take your first-round pick next year. And if you're Ryan Pace, you don't have next year, so you might as well give up the first-round pick. Because if you don't get a quarterback, you're fired anyway. So guess what? Chicago just has the right amount of desperate in them. They have so much desperate in them. Ryan Pace needs a quarterback. They have to win. He knows he's fired if they don't win this year. So guess what? I don't care if I have a first-round pick next year. I need a quarterback now, and I need this quarterback to show me he can play. Otherwise, I'm gone. They're the perfect team. They're the perfect team to fleece. The New England Patriots at 15, I think you can get a second. I think you get a 2 from New England. You've got the Vegas Raiders. There's some murmurs that they're interested in a quarterback now all of a sudden at 17. You probably get a 2 from them. I think if you go further than that, Washington football team, you might get a 2 from them. But I think if you dip past them at 20, I don't think you're getting a 1 from Washington next year. And I don't think they need a quarterback, but they've got Fitzpatrick. And they seem more inclined to kind of, jump from quarterback to quarterback. The Chicago Bears are in a different situation. Their general manager, Ryan Pace, knows it's now or never. And if it's never for him, what the hell does he care if he gave up a first-round pick in next year's draft? Right? He's not going to be there anyway. So you are more inclined to get a first-round pick from Ryan Pace and the Bears. That's one team. Another team is Pittsburgh. Does Pittsburgh get in the quarterback game? I don't see Pittsburgh trading up. That's just not really in their DNA to move 12 spots up. That just doesn't seem like a Pittsburgh move. But Roethlisberger at the end of the line, Do they say, look, let's get the guy now, have him sit behind Roethlisberger for the year? This is the year we got to get him. Have him sit for a year. Roethlisberger's done. He takes over next year. It's a perfect year for Pittsburgh to get one. The question is, do they like the one that's on the board at 12? Or are they going to give a first-round pick? To go 12 spots up, I would imagine you have to give up a 1. That doesn't sound like something Pittsburgh is all that excited about doing. Although, what did they give up to get Minkah Fitzpatrick a couple of years ago when they traded with the Dolphins? They gave up a first-round pick, didn't they? So, I mean, stranger things have happened. You know, if you're Pittsburgh, you're drafted in the 20s. That's where you are every single year. You're not getting your quarterback drafted in 24. So if you want to get the quarterback to replace, you've tried. You took the kid Mason Rudolph. He stunk. You took him in the 3rd round. You've realized I can't get a quarterback just waiting to get one in the 3rd round. I've got to move up and get one if I want one. So I think Pittsburgh is in play. Another team in play would be New Orleans, the Saints. So I think behind you in the draft, New England's in play, Vegas is in play, Washington football team's in play, Chicago's in play, Steelers in play, and the Saints. Those are the teams behind you that I think are in play. Now, you can get a little bit creative here and go to the top half of that 2nd round, and that's where the Atlanta Falcons sit. They have pick number 35. So if you're Philadelphia, and let's say Atlanta passes on a quarterback at number 4, all right? They don't take a quarterback at number 4. I was thinking about this morning. I'm interested to get your take on this. They don't take a quarterback at 4. A quarterback falls to 12. They have the 3rd pick of the 2nd round. So, do you call Atlanta and say, you want this quarterback at number 12? I'll take pick 35, and I want your first-round pick next year. You move from 35 to 12. Philadelphia would go back from 12. Now, the problem would be they have no first-round pick in this draft. They would have 2 second-round picks this year and 4 first-round picks next year. You could trade back up into the first round because you have 2 seconds and 2 thirds and 4 firsts. Is that a deal you're interested in? If I'm Howie Roseman, do I pick up the phone at number 12? Because I was looking at this today. The 2 teams in the 2nd round, if they don't take a quarterback in the first, Atlanta, Denver. If Atlanta and Denver don't take a quarterback in the first round, and I think they're the quarterback teams ahead of you, other than the ones that are going to get quarterbacks. If they don't take a quarterback, they pass on the quarterback. You know, it goes Lawrence, it goes Wilson, and it goes Fields or Jones. And Atlanta passes on a quarterback. Cincinnati takes Sewell. Miami takes Chase. Detroit takes Pitts. Somebody. They don't take a quarterback. Carolina takes not a quarterback. Denver's on the board. They don't take a quarterback. Now, 3 quarterbacks are off the board. 2 remain. Dallas, New York, they're not taking a quarterback. Now 2 quarterbacks are on the board at 12. Atlanta and Denver are both not with a quarterback, but they're starting to fall. I'm Howie Roseman. Hey, Atlanta, I see you sitting there at 35. Would you like to move back up and get this quarterback at number 12? We want 35, and we want your first-round pick next year. You do that? 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Denver, you have 40. Same deal. We'll move back to 40. You get 12. We want your first-round pick next year. So now I have 2 second-round picks this year. Now, the question is, are you giving up too much by getting yourself back out of the first round? Because what ends up happening a lot is you flip-flop spots in the first round. But you're adding the first-round pick next year in what many people think might be a deeper, better draft. Not at the top, though. That's where the challenge is. I think at number 12, the player at 12 in this year's draft might be better than the player at 12 in next year's draft. Next year's draft just seems to be deeper. It's interesting. Think about it. 609-403-0973. What do you guys out there think? Jalen is watching on YouTube. He says, I hate completely moving out of the first round, even for another first next year. Well, keep in mind, and I agree with you, keep in mind, though, Jalen, you have 2 second-round picks now. You can use those to move back into the first round, and then that means you have a 4th first-round pick next year. You might not end up with a second-round pick this year, but you would have 2 second-round picks. You can either get 2 second-round players, and that puts you in play for Asante Samuel, Rashad Bateman. You can get both of those guys, because keep in mind, you have 37 as well. So in this scenario, if you trade with Atlanta, you would have 35 and 37. If I told you you got a first-round pick next year and ended up with Asante Samuel and Rashad Bateman, are you okay with that? Right? So, yeah, I agree with you that I don't like getting out of the first round this year, but I feel it would give me the ammunition to get back into the first round this year if I wanted to. Right? If I wanted to, I could get back into the first round. And that's what you have to keep in mind. 609-403-0973. Mike, the Steelers moved up 10 spots to get Devin Bush in the first round without moving a first-round pick. Also, Steelers have Haskins, which the Steelers are excited about. I only see the Steelers trading with Philly if Fields is there at 12. That's right. They did sign Haskins. Good point. And they moved up 10 spots to get Bush in the first round. The question is, though, where were they? Where did they draft Bush, Josh? Where did the Steelers draft Bush? Was he like 10th, 11th, 12th? Yeah, and I said they're at 24. To move from 24, 12 spots up, they drafted him at 10. So they went from 20 to 10, and they didn't give up a first-round pick. What'd they give up? Do you know what they gave up to move from 20 to 10? They gave up their first-round pick that year. They flip-flop spots, so you're saying, and a second-round pick and a third. So, right, they moved 10 spots. This is moving 12 spots. They gave up a second and a third. To go 12, you might have to go first round instead of a second and a third. Those 2 extra spots are pretty big. I mean, you're telling Philadelphia to drop down 12 spots. Whoever you traded with the other 2 years ago, you only went from 10 to 20. This year, you're saying go from 12 to 24. That's a big difference. That's 4 extra spots. But duly noted, hey, look, it might be a second and a third. You might say to Philly, hey, we'll flip-flop spots and we'll throw in a second and a third. It's a possibility. But I think that gives you a little bit of insight on the possibility of what it might take for someone to go from the 20s to get to 12. And those are the teams that I think are in play. So, and look, Pittsburgh, I don't know that they're a big – I just mentioned the teams that have – they have an older quarterback. They need one. I forgot about Haskins. If Fields is there, though, are you passing on Fields if you can get him because you have Dwayne Haskins? I doubt it. Also, I mentioned 5 other teams. It's not just Pittsburgh that potentially could trade with you in that scenario. By the way, the Steelers acquired Minkah Fitzpatrick. They traded a 2020 4th-round pick and a 2021 7th-round pick from the Miami Dolphins for a 2020 1st-round pick. That was the 18th pick in the draft and some other stuff, a 5th and a 6th. So the Steelers have moved a little bit. All right, so this is Howie Roseman on Wednesday of last week. He talked about the trading back. Take a listen.
If you move back, it's because you feel like you have a bunch of guys that are the same value and you'd be really happy getting one and getting the extra volume from that pick. If you move up, it's because your board kind of drops off at that point. And if you select, it's because you feel like it's the last player in that sort of range. And so when we discussed this, I think those were really the things we were discussing about moving back. And when you're moving back early, you have to feel like you're getting a premium. And we felt like we were getting a premium to do that.
So that's why they made the trade, because they felt they were getting a premium. Now, same scenario here. If they trade back again, could they do it for a premium?
Well, the reason we traded back from 6 to 12 was because flexibility creates opportunity. And for us, having an extra first-round pick, when you go back and look at things that are hard to acquire, that's one of the hardest things to acquire is a team's first-round pick in the following year and to move back 6 spots.
So the flexibility, you heard him talk about. The premium, you heard him talk about. So anything that I just laid out there, is that a possibility in your mind? 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Speaking of the draft, Ryan Roberts, draft expert, will join me at 2:40 today. You're going to want to hear Ryan. He's got great insight on the draft. He's a draft analyst from Coast to Coast Scouting. And we will kind of dive into the scenarios, how deep the draft is. Is it better to move back if you're sitting at 12? All that is in play. Ryan Roberts at 2:40 today. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan, the all-new Matt Blatt Nissan, now open, Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot. Online, mattblattnissan.com. This is the Sports Bash. You can text us, 609-403-0973. You can always watch the show live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and be a part of the live chat. I see you guys chatting in there. I'll get to those comments in just a little bit. Ryan Roberts at 2:40. Paul Hudrick, the Sixers, had a disaster week, and it doesn't look much better. The injury report tonight is it's like a CBS receipt. That's what the Sixers injury report today looks like, a CVS receipt. Back with more Sports Bash.
It's Sixers basketball tonight on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
And here's the steal by Benny, and Simmons with a jam, flying in on Brooklyn, and Ben Simmons with a two-hand stop.
The Sixers host the Oklahoma City Thunder tonight. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Philadelphia 76ers basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey, 97.3.
All right, a Monday edition of the Sports Bash text board is open. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. If you're watching the show live, you can be a part of the live chat over in the comments section. Jalen is watching on YouTube, says, do you think this is the year with the most intrigue surrounding the Eagles pick? I really have no clue what they will do this year. So many needs, new staff, so much ammunition. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of the last time I can remember having this much draft conversation and good, solid back and forth where people just didn't know was Chip Kelly's first year. When they took Lane Johnson. They had the 4th pick in the draft that year. I think it was, and 3rd or 4th. I think it was 4th. They ended up with Lane Johnson, but there was a lot of speculation on what they could have done in that spot. If you remember, if you go back to that Lane Johnson draft, what was that, 2013, I think it was the Lane Johnson draft? You go back to 2013, the Lane Johnson draft. I think that's the last time that we had this much speculation because the year they traded up to number 2, we knew they were going to take Carson Wentz or Jared Goff. It was whoever fell to them. That's who they were ending up with. So there wasn't a lot of speculation there. They took Lane Johnson, and there was a lot of talk in that draft about, man, who was going to be there? Well, Deion Jordan, you remember, well, he went to Oregon. And we ended up going number 3, so you couldn't take him. But there was a lot of talk in that draft about, I remember, man, vividly, talking about Star Lotulelei, the defensive tackle who was at Utah, who's ended up being an okay player. That's the guy that I really liked. There was a lot of talk about, taking the different offensive linemen. Who was going to be there? Eric Fisher, Luke Jokel, Lane Johnson really wasn't of the 3. I mean, people weren't really talking about Lane Johnson. If you remember in that draft too, Chance Warmack, who played for the Eagles recently, who was terrible. He was drafted at number 10. DJ Fluker, he's kind of been a bust. He was drafted at number 11. 3 straight Alabama players went, 9, 10, and 11. D. Milner couldn't play. Chase Warmack couldn't play. DJ Fluker couldn't play. And it's funny. People say, well, how come you don't draft Alabama players? They can't all play, right? Not every Alabama player can play. Those 3 right there, boom, 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 went back to back to back, and none of them can play. By the way, just because you went to LSU doesn't mean you can play. Barkevius Mingo, I'm talking to you, pick number 6 in the 2013 draft. Like, we can't just pigeonhole guys because they went to a certain college and think, well, they can play because they went to a certain college. Like, who was bringing up the point about, hey, they don't have an Alabama player on their roster. I get it. Alabama's pretty good. You'd like to have some of those guys. But if you had 3 Alabama guys on your roster, they did have an Alabama guy on their roster. Chance Warmack, he sucked. If you had 3 Alabama guys on your roster, people would say, man, the 3 Alabama guys you have stink. Milner, Warmack, Fluker. You're not winning a lot of games with those 3 players. So let's not fall in love with the college. Let's not fall in love with, the size of a player versus a smaller guy. Guess what? You can have J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who's like 6'3". I'll take Tyreek Hill. I think that's working out better. So this whole conversation about, well, I don't want Devonta Smith. He's too small. Guess what? You take Tyreek Hill, and you know what? He's pretty small. Guys who can play, they can play. Guys who are big and can't play, they don't help you out too much. So there's a lot of debate about that. Well, is Devonta Smith too small? I'm not saying that it shouldn't be questioned, right? I'm not saying that you shouldn't bring it up. Hey, what's concerning about this guy? Well, he's small. I'm concerned about his ability to take hits. I mean, he's listed at 6'1", which, by the way, is a pretty decent size height-wise. But he's also listed at 175, which I think is probably not accurate. But that being said, you've got Jalen Waddle. And Jalen Waddle, on the other hand, is a guy who is, 5'10". So are you going to take the taller, lankier guy who was more productive? Or are you going to take the smaller guy who was hurt? I mean, remember, Waddle got hurt. That's why he didn't play a lot his senior season here. So all of that is a factor. But that doesn't necessarily, you bring up Tyreek Hill, okay? Now, Tyreek Hill, to me, is probably the best weapon going in football right now. He's listed at 5'10", 185. If you're taking any receiver in the league, okay, you can have pick of the litter, any receiver in football. I'll give you first pick because I'm taking Hill, right? You have whoever you want. I get Hill. You get the field, I'll take Hill. And you might say, that's ridiculous. Guess what? That guy's more productive than your big guy. 87 catches, 1,300 yards, 15 touchdowns, 15 yards a catch. So if you want Julio Jones, I don't even know who else you would put on that list because I'll take Tyreek Hill. You want Mike Evans, DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins is great. How many playoff games has he won? As many as I have. Oh, he won one. I apologize to DeAndre Hopkins. He did win one in Houston with who was the quarterback from North Carolina? Didn't he? He had. Did they win with Watson? I thought they had. Gotcha. DeAndre Hopkins, by the way, is 6'1", the same size as Devonta Smith, but he's 212 as opposed to Smith, who's 160. So he's a much more bigger physical guy. But even like DeAndre Hopkins, 6'1", so was Devonta Smith. Julio Jones, you get a guy like Julio Jones who's 6'3", 220. He's a big physical receiver. He hasn't won a whole heck of a lot, but he's a big physical guy. I'll take Tyreek Hill. You can have that guy. All right? I'll take Tyreek Hill. You can have him. I mean, you go through the wide receivers in this league who are who's the guy? Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs is not a big guy. Guess what? I'll take him. You can have Julio Jones. Stephon Diggs, 1,500 yards. I'll take Diggs. You take Jones. I'll take Diggs. I'll take Hill and Diggs. You can have Julio Jones and DeAndre Hopkins. I think Diggs and Hill. So the size to me, yeah, I get it. DK Metcalf is a physical freak. Calvin Ridley is another guy. Calvin Ridley, first-round pick, who was a big dude, by the way, who went to Alabama, 6'1", 190. I don't think people are banging down the door to say, man, we really need Calvin Ridley, even though, my God, he had 1,400 yards and 9 touchdowns last year. They have Ridley and Julio Jones on that team, and they stink. You know who I like? I'll take Terry McLaurin. McLaurin's a guy who's, 6 foot, 210. He's a bigger guy, not the tallest guy. A lot of shapes and sizes, guys. A lot of shapes and sizes. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the shapes and sizes. Draft expert Ryan Roberts, Coast to Coast Scouting, will join us here. Ryan, really good, very deep on the draft. We'll take a look at this wide receiver class, this corner class, this edge rusher class, what the Eagles might do at 12. He's got that coming up here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. In 20 minutes, I have a Sports Bash cash code word worth $1,000. It's the final week. So start scooping up those code words and entering them in at 97.3 ESPN.com. right, 20 till the top of the hour here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. The NFL Draft, of course, on Thursday. You can hear all the coverage here on 97.3 ESPN. Thursday night starts at 7 p.m. Friday night, day 2 coverage starts at 6, and we'll have the Saturday coverage for you all day starting at noon on Saturday. Ryan Roberts is co-host of the Believe in the NFL Draft Prospects podcast and the NFL Draft Analyst at Coast to Coast Scouting. We're going to talk a little draft. Obviously, Philadelphia at 12. Other thoughts on how deep this class is? We've heard a lot about, hey, so many guys opted out, went back to school for their senior year. So how deep is this? Philadelphia has 11 picks. Is this the year that you want to have 11 picks? We'll get into that with more. Ryan Roberts joins me now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline as the NFL Draft is just days away. Ryan, what's going on, man?
Mike, how are you?
All is well, and I know that you do the draft like, this is your thing. This time of the year, though, are you ready? Like, are you done with the talk, or do you love the back and forth speculation?
I actually love it. I got finished with the process a couple weeks earlier than I usually do. So this is the fun part for me, is kind of, trying to understand what the truths are, what the lies. And then, when the draft finally starts, it's kind of just sit back and understand how off you were with some things that you saw in film, how different the league values certain players. I mean, you hear that all throughout the process, but it's just kind of cool to see everything kind of go to fruition. But this is kind of like kick back and relax time for me.
All right. At the top of this draft, where, in your opinion, is the first move that is the, whoa, I didn't think that was going to happen move?
Well, I think the first move that's going to happen is I really am a believer that Atlanta is going to be on the move somewhere. The question is, who is going to make the move up potentially for maybe the fourth quarterback to start the draft, which has never happened in NFL draft history. So is it going to be, Denver at 9? Is it going to be New England at 15? Or do the Washington football team have enough ammo at 19 to get up? Do the Chicago Bears at 20 have enough up? I don't think that the latter two there, the football team and so we're calling them that, but the football team and the Chicago Bears, I don't think they're going to have enough ammo to get all the way up to 4, but I do think that there's going to be some crazy movement there. And I think we're going to, if you're asking me like what the craziest thing is, I mean, we potentially are going to have 4 quarterbacks to start the draft again. That has never happened in NFL history. So I think that the chaos is going to start at 4, and then we're going to see, just kind of how the board falls from there, because the early run on quarterbacks is going to push a lot of talent at some positions back a little bit, which is kind of where you always are interested to see where those runs do start.
All right, so that's interesting, because we had thrown out a scenario that if Atlanta passes on a quarterback or they trade and get out of that spot and quarterbacks start to fall, like this year seems to be so odd. I threw out a scenario. Hey, if you're Philadelphia and you're at 12 and nobody behind you, like what realistically, if you are Philly at 12, all right, and Chicago wants to move up to 12, what are you asking for in return to go from, if you're Philly and the Bears want to go from 20 to 12, if you're Howie Roseman, what are you asking for?
20 to 12, I'm looking for at least, I mean, obviously swapping first round picks. I would ask for at least maybe 2 day 2 picks, whether that is a day 2 day, maybe a second round pick this year, second round pick next year. I mean, you always start high. So I would see, hey, your first round pick next year, is that on the table potentially if you're coming out for a quarterback? And I think it really is going to be very interesting, because again, if you're right and Atlanta stays packed there, and let's say they take Kyle Pitts or they take Penei Sewell or they take whoever they take, if a guy like Justin Fields starts moving down the board, I think that's the guy that people are really going to be, kind of enamored with and potentially trying to trade up for. I think that's the guy that if he falls, it's going to be a lot of movement and a lot of conversation. And if it does make it far enough where Philadelphia is in the equation, I think, again, you start high, you work low, but I think it will be somewhere in the market of obviously swapping at the first round picks this year, moving back to 19 or 20, whoever it is, and then at least 2 day 2 picks, whether it is this year or next year.
Yeah. And then of course, I mean, you have deeper options there at that 12 spot. If somebody wants a quarterback and say, I don't know, how likely do you think Pittsburgh or New Orleans or maybe Vegas, do any of those Washington football team make a call to 12 and say, hey, someone's on the board at 12, we're interested? I mean, any of those teams move-up candidates for you?
I see, like, the Washington football team is definitely, in my opinion, a candidate to move up. Obviously, they got Ryan Fitzpatrick as a stopgap, but I don't think, you're not going to trade within the division most likely, right? So I don't think that will be on the table. You mentioned the Steelers, which, hey, Ben Roethlisberger's probably entering the final year of his career, so you need to figure out. I just think that the Steelers, unfortunately, at 24, have just too many needs to prioritize drafting a quarterback that isn't going to play this year. So I don't think that they're going to be an option. New Orleans, I mean, I would love for them to get a young quarterback because I'm not sold on the prospects of Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston being the guy moving forward. So I would love for them to be in the young quarterback market. But from 28 up to 12, it's going to take a lot of capital. And then, the Saints are historically, they just don't have a bunch of capital because they're always on the move. So I don't think that they're a trade-up option. I think that the best bet is if it's with Philadelphia specifically. I think Chicago Bears at 20 is maybe the best team for maybe that move up, especially if one of those guys like a Trey Lance or Justin Fields, for whatever reason, have fallen all the way to 12. Having the bridge quarterback of Andy Dalton for a year, to have one of those guys, which, especially for Trey Lance, having only started 17 games on the FCS level, he could be, in for a potential redshirt year. And I think that would be a good conversation. So if it is Philadelphia at 12, I think Chicago is probably the most likely scenario. Maybe New England, but I for whatever reason, I don't know, the Bears are just kind of sticking out to me.
Ryan Roberts, co-host of the Believe in NFL Draft Prospects podcast and the NFL Draft analyst at Coast to Coast Scouting. Philly at 12. Best player available on the board at 12 will be?
I would say, so I don't know if he'll be on the board, but I think J.C. Horn, if he's there, I think that's the pick for Philadelphia. I really do think that it's going to come down to wide receiver or cornerback. The only other option, and to speak to the best player available, kind of conversation, is if Rashawn Slater falls to 12. I know it's not going to be the sexy pick that the Eagles are going to necessarily want, but I mean, they've historically have built that way, and it is the best way to build, from the inside out. So whether Rashawn Slater eventually takes over left tackle, if Jordan Mailata and Andre Dillard doesn't figure out the position, or if he settles in at guard with Brandon Brooks coming back from, another leg injury. And, I think it really, you could always, I know Isaac Seumalo is a solid player at left guard, but I think you could always invest and improve that position. So I think Rashawn Slater could be the best player on the board. That would change the conversation, but ultimately I think that he'll be off. And I think that the conversation will be who's the best corner or wide receiver available that we want to add to the football team.
Okay. So if you're at 12 and Horn is there and one of the Alabama receivers, which way would you go?
If Jalen Waddle was there, I would probably take Jalen Waddle. I am a big Waddle guy. I think that, and I was listening to your conversation, obviously, beforehand about, the body typing and size profiles and everything. I just think that what Jalen Waddle has from a start-stop, acceleration, long speed conversation, I think that he brings such a dynamic element that if he made it to 12, I think that instantly it just really just unloads all types of possibilities and creates great spacing for Nick Sirianni's offense. So I really think that would be the best option. If it's J.C. Horn or Devonta Smith, I wouldn't fault them for going either way, but I am a big J.C. Horn fan. I think J.C. Horn is a top 10 player in this draft. So I think that he is the player. And I think that at the end of the day, with how the game has evolved, cornerback is a more vital position for a team now than a wide receiver. I think that especially in this year's class where there's so many wide receivers to have, that you could get a guy, later down the board that, might not be quite Devonta Smith, but will give you good production. And I think that, again, cornerback has just become such a paramount position. And the Eagles obviously have struggled at that position even after picking up Darius Slay last year. So I really do think that J.C. Horn, if the conversation is J.C. Horn, Devonta Smith, I'm pulling the trigger on J.C. Horn. I'm a big fan of him.
All right. So this is interesting to me because last year you had CeeDee Lamb, Ruggs, and Judy. They were the three. And then Jefferson, to most people, was the fourth. And it ended up being that Jefferson, maybe T. Higgins, and Claypool ended up being the three most productive players. That doesn't mean they're going to be the best, but they were the most productive. This year, it's Waddle, Chase, and Smith. For you, who is the Jefferson and the Claypool and the Higgins? Who are the guys that are not being talked about as the best three, but might end up being more productive?
I think Rashad Bateman from Minnesota comes to mind very quickly. For me, I think he's just overshadowed in this class. And I think he tested really well, a lot better than I thought he was going to, that I anticipated him to test. But I don't think he's like super dynamic. He's going to run away from you. He's a crafty route runner, which was what Jefferson really was. I mean, that was kind of his big selling point, obviously, to Minnesota this year was, no matter who you put on him, he was a difficult guy to stop just because he was just so smooth in and out of breaks and created such easy separation. I think Rashad Bateman is that guy. And then I think a guy that has been known for several years, but has just not been highly publicized this draft cycle just because of no combine and, the pro day circuit being maybe a little questionable on numbers and just the fact of that he has been dealing with injuries over the last couple of years is Rondale Moore from Purdue. I mean, if you turn on the tape from 2017 when he was or 2018 when he was a true freshman against Ohio State, I mean, he took him for over 200 total yards. The kid is a dynamic weapon, ran 4 threes, had a 42-inch vert. Like, he checks all the boxes. The only problem is he's not the biggest guy in the world. He's only measured in about 5'7", 180 pounds, which is outlier type of size, height and weight. So it's not a perfect fit, and he's not going to be for everybody. But if you get him in the correct scheme in the slot, let him be that guy, let him be super physical after the catch, let him be the athlete that he is. I think that he could be perhaps the most productive player in this draft compared to where he's going to be selected, because I think he might slide into early in the second round, but I think he's an excellent football player that gets a role that, when you talk about the San Francisco 49ers and what they ask their wide receivers to do, like, he fits so well into that West Coast, ask guys to be athletes after the catch, big yak guys. Like, he is that guy. And I really think that he is an excellent football player that's being a little overshadowed due to injuries and not having a combine this year.
Yeah, I'm interested real quick. You talk about like a true slot guy, like the kid Atwell from Louisville. I mean, that guy's really small, but he might be the best open field space guy that's in this draft.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a little different conversation. Like, Rondale Moore is like the guy that's 180 pounds but can squat 600, and he's going to break a ton of tackles. Kadarius Toney is kind of the same guy in that regard. But then a guy like Atwell, like you said, he is the elusive, super fast guy. And I mean, he measured in his pro day, 150 something pounds. He said when he went to the combine for rechecks, he was 149.
Oh,
so
gosh.
He is. I mean, that's like 0 percentile of size. So obviously he does not have the size of profile, but as a space gadget player that can return kicks, like, then you could start filling me in on the conversation. But you're absolutely right. When you're talking about just making guys miss with athleticism and fluidity and flexibility in open field, Atwell is maybe the best in this class.
All right, I got like a minute. So if you took a corner or a wideout at 12, what position has a deeper ability to get that player at 37 if you went the other way?
So for what the Eagles need, to be as brief as possible, for the Eagles need, I think that cornerback has the best opportunity to have a instant starter at 37. I think there's some guys from the wide receiver class that are a little smaller, maybe fit that slot role, but I really think what the Eagles need is they need Rager, obviously, to step up, but they need that dynamic outside guy that can really press guys off the line of scrimmage, can be that, contested catch guy. Like, they need a safety blanket. So I think that when you're talking about the value in the second round, you're more likely to get a starting corner than what you are to a starting outside receiver, potentially.
All right. And real quick, 30 seconds. Yes. The scenario in my head is Roseman moves back and takes a lineman. Thoughts?
I mean, it's possible. It's a really deep offensive line class. So if you said, like, hey, let's play the board, let's move back, like he already has once. Let's get a guy like a Tevin Jenkins or maybe a Christian Darrisaw falls, and that's your insurance at left tackle. Maybe you could move inside to guard for now and see how he kind of develops. So I can buy it. I think it would be wise of Howie because, honestly, there's a lot of needs on this board. So getting as much draft capital, you mentioned the 11 picks, getting as much as possible this year, I think, is really vital for this team because there's a lot of holes to fill, unfortunately.
Ryan Roberts, co-host of the Believe in the NFL Draft Prospects podcast. Check that out for NFL Draft leading up this week, and he's the NFL Draft analyst at Coast to Coast Scouting, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. You can follow him on Twitter at Rise and the letter N Draft. Rise and Draft. Ryan, appreciate it, man.
Absolutely, Mike. Appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, we'll have to try to see if we can get Ryan scheduled for later on in the week and do some more draft talk because that was really good conversation. Want to get a little deeper with him on some of the stuff, so we'll see if we can't get him later on in the draft, or excuse me, a little bit later on in the week as well. Speaking of later on in the week, on Friday's show, draft expert Tony Pauline from Pro Football Network will join me. All right, hour 2 of the Sports Bash. I'm Mike Gill, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And don't forget, you can watch the show live at 97.3ESPN.com. You know, I want to thank, last month, we had over 4 million impressions watch the show. Unbelievable. Like, over way more than we anticipated when we started doing the video portion in a month. Over 4 million eyeballs saw this thing. So the video has been a nice addition. We appreciate that. People sharing the show. If you're watching the show on video, on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, hit the like button, hit the share button, do something, man. Get it out there. Let's go. We appreciate that. Ryan Roberts was great. Yeah, he was very good. I enjoyed talking to him. We're going to try to set up something with him for later on in the week, maybe Wednesday or Thursday. Tony Pauline will be on Friday's show. Although, what happened to that board over there? What did happen? On Friday at 5:25, Tony Pauline. Sal Pal on Friday as well. Wow. Stuck in my hand, whatever that was. So thanks to Ryan Roberts. He was good. I appreciate him, and we'll try to do something more. Let's see. Mike, the Eagles should have never traded the 6th pick. They were in position to get an impact player. Love your show. Thank you, Lauren Luther. Sorry, Lauren, I don't agree with you. I think this team has way too many holes. One impact player is not changing the dynamic of this team. It doesn't mean you're entitled to your opinion. Some people think that getting a player at 6. Look, if they got Jamar Chase and he turns out to be the best receiver in this league, you could turn into the Atlanta Falcons and have the best receiver in the league, but you don't have enough help. Getting that pick, that first-round pick in next year's draft, gives you a very good player at 12 and gives you 3 very good players next year in the draft, hopefully. You got to hit on them. But getting the 6th pick, all that means is, hey, I might get Kyle Pitts. I might get Jamar Chase. Those 2 players are really good. I agree with you. You're going to get a better player there, precisely. But keep this in mind, Lauren. Henry Ruggs was the first receiver taken last year. He wasn't the best, not last year anyway. Jerry Jeudy was the second receiver taken last year. CeeDee Lamb was the 3rd. Jalen Reagor was the 4th. Justin Jefferson was the 5th. The 5th was the best, at least for last year. So just because you moved from 6 to 12 doesn't mean you're not getting the better player. Happens all the time. And even if the player at 6, let's say Jamar Chase turns out to be the best receiver, and you end up getting Waddle, and he's the second best receiver. That's not a bad thing that you got the second best receiver in the draft class, if he's good. I mean, if the second best receiver has 300 yards and the best one has, 1,000 and you're 700 yards behind them, well, that's no good. But if they're both highly productive, you have another pick in next year's draft. You can get another player. Plus, you have the Colts pick. You get another player. They needed the players. They needed the volume of players. I get it. I would have rather picked 6-2. But I think you can get a very impactful player at 12. It gives you so much flexibility. It gives you so much optionality. I like the move. Mike, you may have fired up Giroux. Maybe. I mean, they're so far out of it. He passed prop the other day. I got a prop jersey over my shoulder here, and I got into a conversation with Schweim like 2 weeks ago, and they were talking about Schweim said the most ridiculous thing I ever heard in my life. Well, I could say that almost every week, but this was really ridiculous. He talked about how small Giroux's legs were, and that's why he wasn't as good as like Dave Pullen and some of these other guys who were the captains of the Flyers. Now, he passed Brian Propp. And I said, come on, dude. I don't care how small Giroux's legs are. He's better than every guy you mentioned, except for maybe Propp. Propp was an underappreciated great player, but similar, where not a sniper, not like, hey, I'm going to bury this in the back of the net, just kind of a do-it-all type of player. Giroux, I'm not a Giroux hater. He's just not the best player in the league. If Brian Propp was your best player, you're probably an average team. Propp's like that guy who's a great complementary star to the real big stars. It's not a bad thing. Giroux's like in the Propp mold, but I will say this about Propp. He scored more points than Giroux did in less games. Giroux, I think, has played almost 200 more games than Propp has. But all right, I want to get off that Flyers thing. Let's see. This is from LSPR 215. Says, I heard Andy Weidel speak on draft strategy. He said this is Phillies' need to find if they are thick-skinned, tough-minded, mentally strong. Do you think he was talking about a certain player? Probably not. I mean, I don't think they're trying to give up too much any information. By the way, they haven't met with these players. That was the whole Sirianni talking about playing rock, paper, scissors. Is because he can't get him face to face. So what am I supposed to do? Metcalf was drafted 2 years ago. That was the J.J. Arcega-Whiteside draft. Yeah, Metcalf was 2 years ago. And by the way, you go back to that draft. I know everybody wants to bang on the Eagles for passing on DK Metcalf. He was passed on how many times? By how many teams, including the team that ended up drafting him? DK Metcalf was drafted with the final pick of the second round. The Seattle Seahawks, by the way, had the 47th pick in the second round, and they didn't pick him. The Seattle Seahawks had the 29th pick of the first round, and they didn't pick him. All of that is conveniently left out when we talk about, hey, you passed on DK Metcalf. Seattle passed on him twice. And he got passed on 63 times. He had a medical red flag, and teams were not going to take him. The receivers taken in front of him, he's the best of the group. That's another example. Marquise Brown was the only receiver in that first round that year. He went to Baltimore. In the second round, N'Keal Harry, Deebo Samuel, who's been pretty good but hurt a lot. A.J. Brown, I think, made a Pro Bowl. Mecole Hardman, nice player, but he's not DK Metcalf. But Metcalf got passed on by the Seahawks twice. That's always conveniently forgotten. The Seattle Seahawks passed on Metcalf twice. Not once, twice. I mean, finally at 64, it was like, my God, if you're going to make me take this guy, I will. You know, Deontay Johnson got picked by the Steelers in the third round. He's been a decent player. Terry McLaurin got taken by the Washington football team in the third round. He's probably been the second best receiver of that bunch. Maybe the third. Probably the second. I don't know. A.J. Brown, Metcalf, those guys are probably the top two. McLaurin is probably the third guy. Unless I'm forgetting somebody a little deeper in this draft. But it's a good example that just because you're the first receiver taken doesn't mean you're the best receiver taken. We've seen that example. Darius Slayton was in that draft in the 5th round. I'd take him over the guys that went ahead of him in second round. By the way, Travis Fulgham was in that draft in the 6th round. Not saying that he's better than some of those guys, but he was at least halfway productive last year. Receivers are tough, man. You know, you go to a big school, you get, like, that's the whole thing with Mac Jones, why I would be concerned about him. Mac Jones has had Drudy, Ruggs, Smith, Waddle. I mean, come on. Look how good those guys are. Mac Jones isn't going to be throwing to those 4 players. Now, if he goes to the Washington football team, they have some weapons there. I'm not Washington, San Francisco. Sorry. If he goes to San Francisco with 3, I mean, they have some weapons, but I don't think they're as good as those 4 players. Deebo Samuel isn't as good as those guys. So why is Mac Jones look so good? Well, he's got 4 first-round receivers. They're going to have 4 receivers taken in the first round the last 2 years. Think about that. All right, I got a lot of texts I want to get to. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Mike, they better either stay at 12 and take a corner or possibly move up for Pitts. That's it. I like those two scenarios. I don't know your name. I wish you would have left it because I could say good job out of you. I like what Ryan Roberts said. I like Horn at 12. If I stay there, I would move up for Pitts. And by the way, there was a report over the weekend that said if Philadelphia was to move up, the person they would move up for is Pitts. You can read more about that on our website, 973ESPN.com, or download the free mobile app and read the article on your phone. But whatever your name is, I appreciate you texting. I wish you would leave your name so I can give you credit. But I like your scenario. If they stay at 12 and Horn is there, I take Horn. I'm kind of like in that mode now. At 12, I'm going to write this down. At 12, I take Horn if he's there. Although Waddle, I'm beginning to like a little bit more as we're getting closer. That's what I hate about this process. I start to like guys a little bit more than I did before. I watched more of Waddle over the weekend. I saw some of Smith. Both of those guys I think I like better after watching them more this weekend. Waddle, I think I like more than Smith. Josh, who do you like better, Waddle or Smith? Do you have a preference of those two guys? Waddle or Smith? Who do you like? Take your pick.
If I had to pick, I would lean Waddle just because he's smaller. But here's the thing. When you had all those receivers together at Alabama, so it was Judy, Ruggs, Waddle, Smith, right? All four of them were playing at the same time. Waddle was ahead of Smith in terms of targets and production the majority of the time. And there's a lot of people who watch college football and cover the draft who I respect who believe that if Jalen Waddle would have played the full year instead of having that ankle injury, that Devonta Smith would have never been the Heisman Trophy winner.
Likely.
So that Waddle, they consider him the number one receiver.
The Alabama coaches would tell you Waddle's better.
And I think I have to respect what those people say over just Devonta Smith's quote-unquote production.
Yeah, I agree there. So my scenarios are Horn if he's there at 12. If I trade up, it's only for Pitts unless I get Chase.
I would trade up for Surtain.
I think I'm staying with 12 and taking Horn.
Because to me, the thing with Surtain is he's starting day one in the NFL. His floor is higher than Horn, but Horn's potential ceiling is higher than Surtain. I think Surtain can start day one in the NFL. I think Horn can start.
Guess what? If you're drafting him at 12 on this roster, he's starting.
No, he is starting, but I think he's not going to be as. He's going to need a year to really flesh out.
I don't know, man. I mean, maybe he was hurt last year.
Well, to me, it's not about the injury as much as the fact that I just think that he still has these raw elements. He's still Horn is still one of these grabby guys. He tends to grab guys at times if they get too deep into their route. Whereas Surtain, he's not going to be the playmaker that Horn is, but he's not going to give up as many big plays past him. You know what I mean? His technique is better.
So this is the scenarios I see happening. They stay at 12. They draft Horn. They trade up for Pitts. They trade back for Slater.
If Slater makes it that far.
Those are my scenarios that I see on Monday. Now, Tuesday could be different.
Yeah, there's a lot of chatter.
I could feel differently Tuesday.
Yeah, it's true. There's a lot of chatter right now that Slater could be is now more likely to go in the top 10 than before. But we'll see. I mean, wherever these quarterbacks go, to me, is going to dictate everything.
Keep your text messages coming. I'll continue to just kind of go through them throughout the day. 609-403-0973 is the text board. Thank you for your text message. Good one. Matt Green in EHT. Mike, I think Micah Parsons is the best kept secret in the draft and could even go as high as 6 to Miami. Sean Lee retired today, so don't rule him out in Dallas either. But Micah Parsons, I agree, he's a difference-making player on defense. If I thought Philly would take a linebacker there, I would probably be more excited about him, but I don't think they will, so I think I'm less excited. But I agree with you. I think he's an impactful player. All right, coming up, the Sixers injury list for tonight's game looks like a CVS receipt. I'll explain next. Yeah, I told you before the break, the Sixers injury list looks like a CVS receipt today. And I don't know that means they're all not going to play, but Paul Hudrick is here to kind of maybe give us some information. The Sixers are kind of coy when it comes to that kind of stuff, but we'll figure out. They had said the other day that Ben Simmons was going to be out. He has been now upgraded to questionable. I don't know how you go from out to questionable, but the Sixers have figured out a way to do that. Paul Hudrick's here to talk more about that. The weekend was ugly. That game in Milwaukee, I know they were very shorthanded, but whoo, that was an ugly one. Thankfully, that's behind them. We've all talked about the schedule. I think they have the easiest remaining schedule in the league. Is that accurate, Paul Hudrick?
At least in the Eastern Conference, I believe. But it's a lot of very, very winnable games over the last 12 for sure.
Does it matter if they're winnable games if you're playing without Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, Danny Green, and whoever else was on that CVS receipt?
Well, against the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are going to be without their best player in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and their second best player in Lou Dort, you might not need those guys. You probably can win this game without that CVS receipt of guys. You probably could still beat this Thunder team because they are just really young, really inexperienced. I mean, they are clear. We all witnessed this years ago with the Sixers. That is what the Thunder are doing right now. Make no mistake about it. This is a tank. This is the process happening in Oklahoma City. And they're being smart about, their best player, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. No reason to put him out there in situations where he could get hurt. Same with Lou Dort. Those are their centerpieces right now. Those are their two guys that they really like. They have a lot of upside, that are good NBA players right now. Everybody else in that lineup is just a lot of hopeful potential upside guys. So if like one of Joel, Ben, or Tobias plays, this should be a 30-point win because that's how bad the Thunder are right now and how bad they are off with injuries. For me, I would really like to see Ben Simmons play because I think it would be a really good kind of get-back game for him where he could, get back into the flow of it and potentially dominate with so many guys out and with him kind of being the focal point.
Yeah, Embiid has a shoulder problem. Is this just a precautionary thing or is there he's questionable?
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's precautionary. The fact that he's been questionable the last two games and not flat out is probably a good sign. I have a feeling that, first of all, Doc he didn't say for sure, but he seemed pretty confident that if that were a playoff game on Saturday, Joel Embiid would have been able to play. He said he knows Ben Simmons would not have been able to, so that stomach bug was pretty darn real, apparently. But yeah, in regards to Joel Embiid, it seems like it's not serious, and it's more and we saw it with Tobias Harris. Like, they just want to make sure these guys are 100% before putting them in. It's a tough balance between that and that number one seed. But again, like we talked about before, Mike, that number one seed means nothing if those guys aren't healthy.
Yeah, no, I mean, if they're not playing, you got no shot, obviously. Harris, knee recovery, this is questionable. I'm imagining this is going to be the rest of the year from him. What about Green with the hip situation?
So that's actually been something he's been dealing with all season. Doc said that. I can't remember the game he missed when he finally missed the game for the first time all season. That is, and Doc had mentioned, that's something that's been lingering all season. Probably something that's not going to be 100% at all through the. He's just going to have to kind of play through it. That leads me to believe that maybe there might be a surgical procedure in his future this offseason. But he's the kind of guy. He's a veteran guy. He's been around the block. He knows his body. And he probably knows he's going to try to play through it. And they need him because he's been really, especially in the second half of the season, he has been excellent. He's been so big for them on the court, off the court. He's been, I think that's like immeasurable how big he's been for them. That, his presence, his leadership, the championship experience, most notably. But yeah, I mean, that's like I said, Doc had mentioned that's something that's going to linger with him all season. So they're just going to have to monitor it and kind of, and nurse it as best they can.
Yeah, and Korkmaz has an ankle problem, and those things are always tricky. You never know there. So that's really your group. Embiid, Green, Harris, Reed, who is health and safety, and Simmons. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys, all questionable for the game tonight. You would imagine some of them play, maybe some of them don't. That being said, did you take away anything from the two Milwaukee games? You get anything from that?
Let's see. A couple things. I mean, listen, I'm kind of digging and searching at this point, but I'll say to start off, I think all 4 games that they lost proved to you how important Ben Simmons is on defensively alone, just how important he is especially guarding the 3-point line, because that's something that he does so well. Mike, I don't think it's crazy to say that all 4 of those games might have ended differently had Ben Simmons been playing in all 4 of them, especially the Golden State and the Phoenix games. Being able to throw him on Curry, being able to throw him on Booker, although Matisse Thybulle obviously did a masterful job, but just having Ben Simmons in the lineup for those games, I think would have made a world of difference and might have been the difference between a win and a loss. So I think that's a big thing in general, just how big important he is defensively. And then, it's a shame because they've lost every game that George Hill has played. But I think what you've seen out of George Hill, you're kind of seeing the bits and pieces of what he can add. Doc had mentioned, and I tend to agree that the biggest disappointment of this, other than the obvious of losing games, is that George Hill needs to assimilate. He needs to get acclimated with these other guys, and they've all been in and out of the lineup, so he hasn't been able to. So, I really want to see what George Hill is going to look like with Ben Simmons, or with prolonged stints with Joel Embiid, what he's going to look like in a bench unit, because we haven't seen that yet because it's been all kind of tangled up. And then the other thing I would just add is don't forget about Tyrese Maxey, man. He's looked really good. Oh, and that's, again, over the last 4 games. He's gotten an opportunity, and he's really taken advantage of it. He's looked really good. What he offers, what he brings to the table with that speed and with his ability to get to the rim is just something they don't have. Now, he's a 20-year-old rookie, so you can't expect him to carry like a big load or have a big role. But I'm just saying, at some point, Doc Rivers even said it, he's going to win them a game in the regular season or the playoffs, and I don't think that's crazy. I think at some point I could see them going to him just to kind of give him that little spark and that energy and that speed, getting downhill and getting to the basket.
Yeah, I don't know if Doc has commented on this because the game on Sunday or Saturday was so brutal. I mean, they got beat by, 40? But how hard is it to try to set your playoff rotations over these last 10 games when there's nobody there?
Yeah, it's impossible, really. Right now and I think there are still things that need to be learned. Shake Milton has been up and down. I thought he's pretty good in both Milwaukee games. I mean, the Saturday game was just you can't really evaluate anybody really, but I thought he was decent considering what they were trying to ask him to do. But I thought the first Milwaukee game he was very good, bounced back after a couple rough games. Furkan Korkmaz was looking really good and looking like he was going to make Doc have to make some tough decisions. Now he's hurt. Thybulle, I think, has kind of been the guy who has really solidified himself. I don't know how you cannot play him in the playoffs because he's just been so good defensively, like game-changing on defense. And then, like I mentioned, Maxey, I mean, that he's given Doc Rivers something to think about. And then another concern, Mike, and actually this kind of goes back to your last question as well, is Dwight Howard. What happens if they play Milwaukee and you have to go with they go with Bobby Portis? I don't think you can put Dwight Howard out there. That matchup was disastrous in those 2 games. So yeah. I think there are just, to your point, so many questions that need to be answered, and they only got, these last few games to do it.
Yeah, I mean, and they went with Scott for 15 minutes, and they went with Tolliver for 21, and Tolliver it was a -18, didn't take a shot. I think he took 1 shot, but nothing from 3. So it wasn't like he said, hey, give me the shot. I mean, so because you're mentioning, I agree with you. That's a good point on Howard. I would guess you would go small with a guy like Scott or Tolliver, and neither one of them.
I would go Ben Simmons. I would go Ben Simmons at the 5, and then I would just make myself a really super switchable team, and surround him with guards and shooters. That's what I would do. I don't know if that's what Doc Rivers is going to do, but I don't think you can play. I mean, right now, what we've seen from Mike Scott, I do not think you can put him in a playoff rotation. He just hasn't been the same guy he was 2 years ago. I don't know if it's his knees. I don't know what it is, but I don't think you can go to him in a playoff series. And Tolliver, as you mentioned, he's done nothing to really I thought his debut was solid, but he's done nothing to separate himself or stand out where I think, okay, this guy deserves minutes. Granted, he's in a tough situation on, his second 10-day, and that's not, it's a lot of pressure and it's not an easy thing to do. But to me, the move would 100% be Ben Simmons, because I just think you have so many guards now that deserve minutes that I don't think putting Mike Scott in just because he's 6'8" makes sense.
Yeah, I thought Rajon Tucker was the best player in the last 6 minutes. But George Hill thing you brought up, I guess it's frustrating because they've now got him, but aren't getting to see him in the role they envision him at all. Right? I mean, if you're watching him and saying, I thought this guy Hill was supposed to help him, this isn't the way that they wanted to use him.
No, not at all. I mean, they had to use him in the starting lineup against Milwaukee. They did not bring him in to change that starting lineup. They brought him in to be a bench guard, to potentially close games for sure at times, and just kind of help with that second unit. It goes back to that Golden State game. I actually asked Doc because they went 4 guards at certain points. I mean, if you want to call Matisse Thybulle, whatever, guard, wing, but they basically went 4 guards and Dwight Howard at the 5, or sometimes they did it with Joel Embiid as well. And I was curious, was that just a product of Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris being out, or is that something he likes? And he said with George Hill, that's a look he really likes. And that goes back to what I said before about just your 4 of your best bench players are probably guards or perimeter players at this point. So instead of kind of shoehorning Mike Scott into that 4, go small and play your best players. And I think that gives you the better chance to win. So I think with George Hill, I think that's what it does. I just think it makes that, it makes the bench unit better. If Doc wants to go with some of those all bench lineups, I really hope he doesn't in the playoffs. I think he's a much better option to play with Dwight Howard than Ben Simmons for sure. I don't think those two should play a single minute together once the playoffs start. And then again, as I mentioned before too, with the closing of games, you see sometimes with Seth Curry, I think Seth Curry can help them. I think he can get hot and his shooting can help, but I think closing games that are physical and really defensive, I don't know that I want Seth Curry out there. I think I'd prefer to have George Hill.
Yeah, I know that we've talked a little bit about that, starting games with Curry, ending games with Hill. Curry, helping shoot you to a lead, Hill being out there to try to hold the lead defensively. That's something that I would like to see if they go down that road. By the way, for those of you out there who said the Sixers had nobody playing this weekend, I'm not watching. They've lost 4 in a row. They went from first place to second. They're now a game and a half behind Brooklyn. And Milwaukee lost yesterday. They were on a back-to-back. So for the guy who texted me the other day and said the back-to-back doesn't matter, Milwaukee looked great for 2 games, played it back-to-back. I think they played Atlanta, who's been playing very well, by the way. And Milwaukee loses yesterday. So they're 3.5 out of the top.
I think Trae Young was out, though. I mean, that's add that to that.
Add that to that. And that Hawks team, I'll tell you what, if we had this conversation a month ago, 4-5-6, okay. 4-5-6 looks interesting. Well, Miami currently is in that, the play-in tournament, but 4, 5, 6, and 7 all have a story to tell all of a sudden.
Yeah, the Knicks. I mean, look how well the Knicks are playing. I mean, they're the hottest team in the NBA right now. I think I for sure thought Miami had a run on them, and now I'm not so sure they do. I mean, they don't look like the same team. And it's funny that they traded Kelly Olynyk and they got Bjelica, and Olynyk looks better in Houston than Bjelica looks in Miami. So that's that's kind of coming back to bite them a little bit. You mentioned the Hawks playing so much better basketball. It's that 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, extremely, extremely interesting right now.
Even further, New York's won 9 in a row. Atlanta's won 7 of 10. Boston's won 7 of 10. Charlotte's won 2 straight. Pacers have won 3 in a row. And Washington has won 8 straight games.
Yeah.
So the whole bottom half of the East is playing some of their best. And the top part has been kind of stumbling along with Brooklyn, Philly, and Milwaukee.
I think some of that too. I mean, I don't want to take I don't want to take credit away from any of those teams because they've all been playing really good basketball. But I mean, part of that is a lot of the upper echelon teams are giving guys breaks. They are kind of resting guys as the stretch goes down. So you're seeing kind of those middle teams and bottom tier teams kind of rising because of that, because guys are giving guys nights, teams are giving guys nights off. So I think that's a factor as well. I will say, I still think that it's the top 3 teams in the East are the teams. They're the teams to beat. New York Knicks are playing great basketball, and Thibodeau has done an unbelievable job. Julius Randle looks like a star right now. I mean, he's been incredible. But I will say that I think in a playoff series, I don't think the Knicks stand a chance against any of those top 3 teams. It's no disrespect to the Knicks. It's just that they don't have, they don't have the horses and they don't have the guys with that experience. I don't think that's something that you can really it's a factor. It's something that is measurable. And that's honestly why the biggest thing I might be scared of with the Milwaukee Bucks is that they seem to be of the Nets, the Sixers, and the Bucks, of that trio, they seem to be the most cohesive, and they're playing better basketball. Yeah, they lost last night, but they are playing better basketball. They have guys with playoff experience. So when I'm looking at the three teams, that's probably the biggest factor, the biggest advantage that Milwaukee might have going into the playoffs.
Real quick, what is the play-in tournament setup? How was it? Best of three? How does that go?
I believe it's best of, well, I could be mistaken, but I believe the teams that are in already only have to win one game, and then the teams that are out have to win two. I think that's the correct way, but I could be mistaken.
Well, that's what they did last year. The team that was out of the playoffs, they had to beat twice, and so they're keeping that same format. But it's a little different because last year they didn't do it where the 7, 8, and 9 like this. If you were in, it wasn't. It was if you were within 4 games of the 8 seed.
Right.
They changed that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be so funny because when the Warriors were here. And they asked Steve Kerr about it because that's where the Warriors, I think, are like 10th or 9th right now. And he said, and he literally said, now that we're 9th or 10th, I think the play-in is great. If we were 7 or 8, I would hate it. And that's just the reality. Like
they're 10 right now, and New Orleans is 5 back of them. So, I mean, unless the NBA really wants Zion and goes to 12 teams in this thing, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make 12 teams get into the play-in. I can see that happening now. But that's going to be it. The New Orleans Golden State's going to be in the mix because they're 5 games up. There's only like 10 games left, right?
Right.
So,
yeah, I would think they have to be in that mix for that potential play-in. And I'm curious too, Mike, like how it's going to affect teams kind of going into that first, being realistic, the 7 and 8 seeds in either conference really don't have a chance. But I'm curious to see what it kind of does. Like, is that team going to be? We saw like last year Portland having to play, and then they beat the Lakers in game 1 because they were kind of already in that playoff mode, right? So I'm just curious if there's any carryover like there was with that last year. And or will it drain a team if they have to play multiple games? Will that be something that hurts a team that's the 8 seed or 7 seed having to go against a 1 or a 2? So it definitely adds a little intrigue. I don't know if I love it or hate it. I mean, I guess more basketball I like, so I'm not going to complain too much. But
all right, so Josh, just the way it works is the 7 plays the 8th. For the 7 seed, which doesn't seem fair. I've already been the 7 seed all year.
Right.
The loser of that game plays the winner of the 9 versus the 10 to be the 8 seed.
Sure.
Yeah, that's if I'm the 7 seed, I already earned the 7 seed. Why am I playing the 8 seed to be the 7 seed? I've already earned that seed.
It's very NCAA tournament-ish, which
All right. Paul Hudrick is back on Wednesday. The Sixers take on Oklahoma City, Wednesday, Atlanta, Friday, Atlanta, and then Sunday, Monday, Spurs, Bulls. And, the schedule, as you mentioned, lightens up a little bit down the stretch. At Paul Hudrick on Twitter to see who is in and who is out of the lineup tonight. All right, Paul, we'll talk to you Wednesday, man.
All right, Mike. Sounds good, man.
He, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Paul Hudrick, our Sixers insider for 97.3 ESPN.com. All right, when we come back, plenty more on the NFL draft. I have a lot of your text messages I promise I will get to. If you are posting on the video stream, I will get to your comments all throughout the show. If you want to have comments for Geoff Mosher, he joins me in 20 minutes. So if you have Mosher questions on the video stream, post them now. Text 609-403-0973, and we will answer your draft questions coming up next here on the Sports Bash. Coming up at 4:40, Bob Wankel, 1 hour from now, our Phillies recap for the weekend. A lot of people have been telling me, man, I just love listening to you and Bob talk baseball. Yeah, Bob and I like to talk a little baseball. We get a little fired up about the baseball. By the way, speaking of baseball, the Coaches versus Cancer Classic this weekend at Mainland. Tremendous event. Great job by everybody to get that field playable yesterday. They got 2 of the 4 games in yesterday because of the rain. Legit talent in this area. So much great baseball being played at the high school level. So much talent. And that Coaches versus Cancer with the proceeds going to the Cancer Fund is fantastic. I think I'm going to get the Venmo donation information so that if anybody out there wants to donate, if you didn't see any of the games or check anything, I want to get that information for you. All right. Stick around. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. All right, 2:45 on a Monday. I was about to say Friday. I jumped way ahead. It's only Monday. By the way, that donation for the Coaches versus Cancer, if you want to make a donation, it's at Mainland Baseball-CVC is the Venmo. If you want to make a donation to the Mainland Baseball Coaches versus Cancer, it's at Mainland Baseball-CVC. That was a great event all weekend long. It started off Friday night, and they had 2 games Friday, 4 games Saturday, and then they ended up playing 2 games on Sunday. And I thought, now I had been there before for a couple games, but this is the first time I really got a chance to hang out all weekend long. I was there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, just watching baseball, man. It's amazing. The talent in the area some of the teams that came down here, that Don Bosco team, holy mackerel, they were men. They were grown men. The kid Kevin Jaxel throwing 92, hits a 3-run bomb. I mean, awesome. So looking forward to the 2022 event. And if you can make a donation to help out the Coaches versus Cancer, it's at Mainland Baseball CVC is the Venmo for that. Great event to Billy Kern and Mike Edwards and the people at Mainland. It was awesome. And all the coaches that helped out. It's all Brett Bean. These guys were on. Their teams weren't even playing to get that field ready yesterday. There was just, like all sports in this area, you get the high school basketball community together. Those coaches and officials are great. I think all the umpires donated their time this weekend, seeing so many familiar faces out there that, I have seen over the years, and they all, I'm pretty sure we're out there donating the umpires for the weekend, so it was just a great weekend, great event over there at Mainland. And Saturday night or Friday night, the guys at Summers Point do a great job. That they got that field, looking great. I mean, I think for the high school playing under the lights, we should start doing that, every Friday night, have the Friday Night Lights game of the week. Let's get these teams even more exposure and get them playing night games Friday nights, have that Friday night game of the week or something like that. I think we can try to make that happen if the schools want to get involved. So there you go. There's the information. I'll give it to you one more time. Venmo at Mainland Baseball CVC. Make a donation, $5, $10, $50, $100, whatever you want for the Cancer Fund. All right. All right. Good talk. All right. A couple more text message on the draft. If you want to get a question in for Geoff Mosher from Inside the Birds on the video, do that, and we will get that up there. Here we go. Let's see. All right, here we go. Dan from EHT. This draft stuff is driving me crazy. Can't wait till it's over. These mocks are ridiculous. They're not ridiculous. See, here's the problem. People look at mocks and then act like if they're not right, that the guy's so off base. Mock drafts are based on the information that you're hearing. And that doesn't mean, that you don't put your own little spin on it. Mock drafts, first off, they're fun. You don't have to read a mock draft. That's on you. That if you read it and then you take it as Bible, they're fun. I don't know why people get mad at this kind of stuff. You put a mock draft out, have fun with it. Nobody knows who anybody's taking except for Trevor Lawrence. The Jets, Joe Douglas could be absolutely playing coy. They could be certainly putting Kyle Wilson. I doubt it. But just because certain mock drafts, mock drafts are not going to be 32 for 32. I think the best ones probably get 12 right. I don't know who has the best mock draft the last couple of years, and how many did they get right? 16 of the 32, maybe. I don't know. You don't know what's going to happen at pick 14. I love mock drafts. I have so much fun reading the mock draft because what it does is I read there's certain guys that I like and their mock drafts because they have the best information. And it's a good indicator of what they're hearing about what could happen around you. Now, one team can go rogue and change that whole thing up. And if you look at a trade that happens that you weren't anticipating, that really changes the dynamic. Mike, there have only been 2 wide receivers drafted in the first round in the last 5 years that have made the Pro Bowl, Amari Cooper and Justin Jefferson. So don't draft a receiver in the first round. Yeah, I'm okay with that, dude. That might be the only time you and I have ever agreed on anything, 305. I don't need this big-time wide receiver. It sounds great. Everybody goes gaga for the wide receiver. They don't win anything. Wide receivers don't win. They're great. It's nice to have a fun toy. But you know what? They don't win. Wide receivers don't win. Look at the Super Bowl champions and tell me, what wide receiver is this stud, number one, big-time wide receiver? I mean, yeah, in history of the game, sure, Jerry Rice was awesome, but he was the best wide receiver in a time that was a lot different. Nowadays, like, I could think of a lot of wide receivers that didn't win anything. Randy Moss, Calvin Johnson, we always bring up Julio Jones. Julio Jones doesn't win anything. Wide receivers are luxuries. That's what they are. Wide receivers are luxuries. I know everybody thinks they help out. Of course they help out. No one would suggest that the wide receiver doesn't help out the quarterback. Of course they do. But in the end, that's not why you win a Super Bowl. You don't win a Super Bowl because you have this big-time wide receiver. If you did, Calvin Johnson wins. Julio Jones wins. Randy Moss, he was pretty good. He wins. That's not what happens. Yeah, Mike Evans is pretty good. Really good, by the way. Mike Evans is really good, but he was on that team for a couple of years. And oh, by the way, Tom Brady went there. That helped. I mean, you go back and look at Super Bowl champions of recent years, the Philadelphia Eagles. They didn't have some great wide receiver. You have to have a competent wide receiver. You can't have, Schleprock out there. But, I mean, Denver had Demaryius Thomas, I think, was their top guy. You're not saying, no, they had that Demaryius Thomas. That's why they won. You go back to the Seattle team that won that Super Bowl. They had Doug Baldwin. Right? I mean, come on. We act like you have to have this stud A+ number one wide receiver. You don't. So that is the first time I've ever agreed with you, 305. I don't need a receiver with that number one. I said earlier, if I'm at 12, I'm taking Horn if he's there. And if I trade up, it would probably be for Pitts. Why? Travis Kelce wins a Super Bowl. Rob Gronkowski, he wins a Super Bowl. Kittle, he doesn't win the Super Bowl, but he helped get you to the Super Bowl. Ertz, he wins the Super Bowl. You have a good tight end, that helps you. The wide receiver's a fun toy. Give me Pitts. I'll take him. I take Pitts. I'll take Horn. I know we hate it. The linemen, they help. No, I'm not taking a lineman if I'm Philly. Mike, no trading out of the first round. Chicago first, 2022, and a 20th this year for R12 is ideal. So are you trading? Oh, the Chicago. Okay, so you're saying don't trade out of the first. My other scenario that that I threw out there. Yeah, I like the Chicago one. Terrell Owens didn't win a Super Bowl, but he was very good. Kevin. I see that. Kevin. Owens did not win a Super Bowl, but he was very good. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Download the free mobile app and enter the Sports Bash Cash code word. It's worth $1,000. It's coming up right now here on the Sports Bash. Hey, if you're watching the show live, Geoff Mosher's coming up. So if you have questions for Geoff Mosher, you can post them in the chat, and I will propose them to him. He joins me coming up on the other side for Football at 4. That is coming up next on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. They often imitate it, but never duplicate it. Football at 4. I know everybody's trying, but they cannot do what we do every day for talking football all year long, 365. Geoff Mosher inside the Birds. Look at you, got a collared shirt on there, man. Well,
I
button
like
up.
to dress up on draft week. I know how important it is.
Draft week, dress up.
That's right.
Draft week, dress up. All right, it is draft week. So, is the BS meter in full force this week?
For who, me or NFL teams or both?
Well, this is the week. I mean, you're a reporter. This is the week where you might have somebody tell you something knowing that it's not true, but they tell you, and it's like your obligation to report it.
Sure. It's also along those lines, the week where, a conversation becomes bigger than what it ordinarily would be. For example, you'll see a lot of reports. Teams are looking to trade down. They're having conversations with so-and-so and so-and-so, or multiple conversations. Just because a team calls up and says, hey, Panthers, you're drafting 8. What would it take for me to get up there? Just curious. Oh, well, it'll take this, that, and the other. All right. That turns into, oh, yeah, we're getting calls, a lot of interest. You know what I mean? Exploratory phone calls become larger than life and bigger than what they are. I mean, honestly, if you go and see the reports over the last, I'd say 5 or 6 days, you would imagine that anybody from 7 to 13 or 14 would be willing to trade down or are going to trade down.
Yeah.
Which, of course, it's like nobody wants these players in the top 15.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess there are a lot of Howie Rosemans out there where flexibility, optionality, get me more picks, drop me down. I like a guy at 15 that I can get at 10 or that it's too high. Sometimes you have that element of it where there are certain GMs who do like to wheel and deal because they like to have more flexibility and the options of doing more. And Roseman's in an interesting spot. He already likes to trade. As it was kind of reported today, Todd McShay said the Eagles are the wild card. Why is that? Well, they have 11 picks. And we know Roseman's history. I mean, he likes to move.
He does like to move. I think he has executed more draft day trades in his time at GM than anybody else in that time frame. So he does love to move and shake. They have 11 picks. I would be shocked and stunned if the Eagles came out of the 3-day draft with 11 players. That's just, first of all, it's kind of ridiculous to do that. I mean, I know some people think, well, the more picks you make, it's like a batting average. You get a couple more hits or at least a chance to get a couple more hits. And there's some legitimacy to that. They should at least make 8 picks, but the number of picks they have in the 6th and 7th round, which the chances of making the 53-man roster for those guys is low to begin with. You should use those to be able to leverage to move up if you can.
Yeah, and I know that I think people have been mentioning that around the 5th round is where there's a drop-off, and a lot of it has to do, Geoff, with a lot of the seniors decided to reclassify back as seniors again this year. So you had over 1,000 players that could have been drafted now are going back to college, which means the drop-off in talent in this particular draft class is going to be steep.
Yeah, I've heard it, posited that teams would be smart to trade for future picks this year, move down and or move up, move down. And if you get a 2022 pick, you're in good position because theoretically there should be somewhat more normalcy with college football next fall, we think. I mean, we really don't know, but it's been tough for teams this year because of the no combine. The medicals have been really difficult to find out about without as much FaceTime with guys and doctor time and things like that. So I could understand some teams being reluctant about this year's crop from every position as opposed to what they might be able to get next year from an information standpoint.
All right, let's get a couple questions in for Geoff. We'll kind of mix questions in. We'll go back and forth. We have the draft. Everybody's got questions. Muhammad wants to know, Geoff, what are the chances the Eagles use Ertz to trade back into the first along with that 12th pick? So let's kind of talk about Ertz, because there was a report about 3 weeks ago that it was like, any day now imminent, and now he's still here. Now it's Thursday. What are we hearing about Ertz?
Well, I mean, let's be realistic about what kind of value Zach Ertz can get you in return. I mean, if he was able to get you a 3rd or a 4th, he probably would have been traded already. I don't know if that he has that value right now. So if you're using him to trade back in the first round, it's not just I'll give you my second round pick and Zach Ertz to get into the first round, because that's a second and a fifth theoretically, or something like that. So yes, do I think Zach Ertz has a very good chance to be traded over the 3-day weekend or event? Yes. Do I think it's to use to get into the first round? Doubt it. We'll see what happens. I would think it's probably more of a day 2, day 3 type of thing, and we'll see. But I don't think Zach Ertz enough is going to be able to be packaged with one specific pick to be able to get you into the first round.
Yeah, one team that keeps coming up is Buffalo. They're deep in the first round. Could you move yourself just from 37 to, say, back in the 30 with Ertz, like as a, hey, we'll give you Ertz as the kicker?
You're saying moving from, if you're Buffalo or the Eagles moving from 37, trying to get up to 30?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't know that the Zach Ertz alone is going to be able to do that. I mean, it's still going from the second round to the first round. So even though it's only a 7 slots, I'm not sure that that's enough to get it done.
All right, let's see. Frank wants to know, Geoff, what are your sources telling you? Do your sources tell you that the Eagles really want to move up? So do you think that inside that building they want to go from 12? Because there was a report over the weekend that suggested essentially if they were to move up, it would only be for Kyle Pitts or, I thought this was interesting, a quarterback.
Yeah, I don't think the Eagles want to move up, Frank and Mike. I mean, I think that ideally they'd like to sit there in 12 and be pretty firm that one of the cluster of prospects that they have, that one of them will be there. And when I say cluster of prospects, I'm talking about the names we've been talking about: Patrick Surtain or J.C. Horn. Rashawn Slater as an offensive lineman. I doubt Sewell will be there. Perhaps Jalen Waddle and of those 4. So you have to see how the board goes. I think 6, 7, and 8 become kind of a wild card for the Eagles, not really knowing where the Lions are going to go, not really knowing what the Panthers are going to do. Are they going to wind up trading down? Is New England going to trade up maybe for a quarterback in that spot ahead of Denver? And if so, that would push maybe a few prospects down that the Eagles have their eyes on. So I don't imagine that there would be, I mean, look, you never know, but I can't imagine there would be a trade that happens before the first round begins, unless the Eagles have such great intel that they know they can't get their guy unless they move up.
All right, Jalen says, Mosher, last year, about a week before the draft, you and Adam heard Rieger could be the pick. Any intel or recent information, little breadcrumbs, any breadcrumbs that you have for the Eagles this year? I'm dying over here, he says.
Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, I'm not going to, no one's going to be shattered by this news, but obviously J.C. Horn and Patrick Surtain are not only needs, but fits and value, and they're at 12. I mean, it makes a lot of sense for them. I've said when they pick in the top 15, they tend to go offensive line, defensive line, or quarterback, but it doesn't appear that D-line or quarterback is going to be for them at that point meet the value. So I do think that it's been a lot. I've said before, it's been, my sense is that, they're not as reluctant to take a cornerback this year as they have been in the past this high. So I think you can laser focus on those 2 guys. And if one of them is there at 12, it's a pretty safe bet.
What if one of these 2 guys are there at 12? Justin Fields, Trey Lance. They both might be there. It started off with they're going to be 4 in a row. Well, now there's another scenario that only 3 quarterbacks could get picked in the top 12. So if one of these 2 guys, Trey Lance or Justin Fields, happen to fall to 12, do the Eagles have to change their mind?
That's the big question, the $1 million question. It's a weird position. If Justin Fields is available at 12, it will definitely force me to adjust everything I thought I knew about the NFL draft. I got to be honest with you, because most of the people I speak to, and even the people who are reliable on TV, will say he's as projected to be as good as pretty much anybody who's going to go in the top 3 or maybe a slight bit below. And yet, we know those guys get overdrafted anyway. You can make an argument that some of the guys go in the top 3 other than Trevor Lawrence might be getting overdrafted. So if Fields falls to 12, man, that's probably a scenario that I can't see happening, but I suppose it's possible. Now, a lot of people will say, well, the Eagles should then trade down with a team that wants a quarterback. But if you're a team like New England at 15 that wants that quarterback, do you really have to trade up at that point? if you don't think the Eagles are going to take it, because after the Eagles, the next two teams I don't think are quarterback needy teams. I forget who's right after them. I think it's Minnesota and somebody else, right?
After who? Philly?
After Philly, yeah. It's going to be the Chargers at 13 and Minnesota at 14. I mean, you may have to worry that Minnesota might be looking. Yeah, and then New England. So if I'm the Patriots and I want Justin Fields, do I really think I have to make a deal with the Eagles at 12 to move up so that I get in front of Los Angeles that has Herbert and Minnesota that's got a lot of money right now invested in Kirk Cousins? Maybe Minnesota. You never know. But, I mean, that's a hole we'll have to see when they get there. But I feel like when the Eagles moved out of 6, Mike, they moved out of first-round quarterback territory.
I agree. I don't think they have any intention of although, again, they probably didn't think 12 would give them one. There might be one there, but not the one that they would be intrigued by. Maybe. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I just wonder, like, at this time next year or 2 years from now, if that were to happen and the Eagles pass on Justin Fields and things don't go well, are we going to be doing the whole, oh, man, Justin Fields, he's going to become the Justin Jefferson or the DK Metcalf of this year's, like, we could have had Justin Fields.
Right. Jeff Bone and Pookie wants to know, Jeff, what are your thoughts on the Eagles front 7? Do you obviously linebacker, D-line somewhere in this draft, but what is the state of the front 7 as currently constructed? It's a good question.
It is a good question. Now, am I answering Jeff Bone's questions or Pookie's question here? I'll just collectively.
I think Jeff and his wife both watch.
Okay, good. I'm happy to answer for both of them.
I'm not sure of that, but I see 2 people in the avatar there.
Yeah, I can see that.
By the way, I do know that Jeff, Bone, and Pookie are Eagles fans that watch the show from Los Angeles.
Oh, that's great. I love hearing that. Good. So I hope they're having a great time.
We had a guy from New Zealand watching the other day.
Oh, really?
He was on at 6 o'clock in the morning over there and watched all 4 hours.
We're worldwide, Mike. It's a great thing. Technology is unbelievable. I do think the Eagles will be drafting linebackers. I don't think it'll be in round 1, and I'm not sure we'll see it in round 2. As far as defensive line, I think they'll be drafting defensive line, probably edge rusher at some point in the draft. I would think probably day 2, early day 3. Don't think it's going to be day 1 unless it's Kwity Paye, because several of the guys that we've talked about are already off the board.
All right.
I'm sorry. And as for the current state, obviously they're a little long in the tooth on the D-line with Cox and Graham, but they do have Javon Hargrave, who they signed, is a good, promising young player. Still have Josh Sweat, a great situational player for them. Derek Barnett has a chance to prove that, he should at least earn a contract. And again, they'll probably draft a few guys on the line. So it's still a pretty good, as far as talent-wise, defensive line, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's similar to the offensive line where they're good if they're healthy. They're older. If you have Lane Johnson and Brandon Brooks and Jason Kelsey, those guys are good. They got to stay healthy. Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave are good at the age that they're at. Can they give you 17 games now?
Exactly.
That's the rub. This text message came in. Said there have only been 2 wide receivers drafted in the first round the last 5 years that have made a Pro Bowl, Cooper and Jefferson. Don't draft a receiver in the first round. Would you subscribe to that and say if there's a receiver at 12, you would go get a corner that are harder to get?
Wait, is this 2 wide receivers drafted in the first round the last 5 years that have made a Pro Bowl as a rookie or at all?
It's a good point. I'm assuming he's saying at all or as we'll have to go back.
I'd have to go back and look at that. I don't think that that's listen, I don't
rookie would be different than if you're just saying they're the only 2.
Right.
But I agree. Like, to me, get the corner at 12. You can get last year, some of the better receivers, T. Higgins, Claypool, they went in round 2, Metcalf, round 2, McLaurin, round 3. I feel like there's a better chance of finding a wideout at 37 than a corner.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably true. I don't like those kind of cherry pick statistics because, I mean, I would, sometimes you have to wonder who's the team drafting the wide receivers. Are they good at it? Are they bad at drafting overall? So I don't want to ever just limit a player. Like, I wouldn't, if I were a top 5 team, I'd still take Jamar Chase and feel pretty good about that and not worry about those stats. But I think for the Eagles at 12, the value won't be, I mean, I know that Waddle and Devontae Smith have a chance to be there, but I do think that it's not where they value positionally. It's not going to be their pick there.
Yeah, this is funny because I guess Howie was asked about they have no Alabama players on the roster, and I said they did. Chase Warmack, and he stunk.
That's true.
In the Warmack draft, he went 10th. 9, 10, and 11 were all 3 Alabama players, and all 3 of them stunk.
Wow, that doesn't happen was it D. Milner? Was he 9?
Yep, D. Milner, Chase Warmack, and
Chase Warmack, and 11. Would that be like Jonathan Cooper? I have no idea who would 11.
Jay Fluker.
Oh, Fluker, right. Another offensive lineman.
You could have 3 Alabama players on your roster, and they would all have stunk. So the point is, like Philip says, stay in the SEC on most picks. That will help you most of the time. But just I hate when people say that, like, you don't have any Alabama players. Well, I did. He stunk. Find good players. I don't care where they went to school.
Now, interestingly, that goes along with my theory about, also evaluate the team that's doing the drafting. The Jets are the one that took team that took Milner 9th overall, and they have a history, at least back then when they were going through Idzik and McCagnon of not making very good picks. Who took Warmack 10th? Was that the Titans?
Tennessee.
Yeah, that was, and again, this is several years ago, so that was before their
That was the Lane Johnson draft.
Yeah, so that's when
Luke Jokel, Lane Johnson.
Right. That guy their GM got run out of time. I mean, he did a terrible job. The one before John Robinson took over, I can't remember his name. The one who drafted Mariota, I believe.
Was that Diamond?
No, I can see him, but I just can't picture it. And then who drafted Fluker at 11th overall?
I think that was
Seattle. Huh, that's surprising. They're usually pretty good, but they obviously didn't.
Be wrong, but I'm thinking Seattle. I was looking at that.
I thought it was Arizona because he's been traveled around. I forget who drafted Fluker. I'd have to go back and look.
He's been everywhere. Yeah,
he really has.
DJ Fluker. All right, here's another question for Moshe. Let's bring this up here. Let me. I got a little bit of a freeze situation. Here we go. Geoff Mosher, who do you like more, Patrick Surtain or Horn? I guess that's an interesting question because if you like Horn, you probably get him at 12. If you want Surtain, you have to move up. But do you like Horn better than Surtain?
Yeah, I don't pretend to be an expert on cornerback play. I try to rely on the information that I get from evaluators, and they're both very good. They're both a little bit different stylistically. I think if you want the technician, the guy with maybe a little bit higher level of football intelligence, you want Patrick Surtain. If you want the guy who's got the killer instinct and a little bit more twitchy from an athletic standpoint, you got J.C. Horn. That's J.C. Horn. Many people tell me that you don't lose with either one. Like, it would be a very surprise if both were not great. The one thing about Surtain, though, that does give some cause for concern is, if he gets beat off the line of scrimmage, it's tougher for him to recover than it is for J.C. Horn, who's just a faster, more explosive athlete. But the one thing about J.C. Horn, Mike, is that he's grabby. He tends to be grabby and panic a little bit. So, every prospect has pros and cons, so I just gave it to you there. And I really think that I would say this, because I know how much the Eagles lately seem to value analytics, which tend to favor the physical specimens and the athletes. I feel like J.C. Horn is probably going to get a little bit of a nod higher than Surtain. I don't know that for a fact, but, that's how I would analyze the situation.
All right, over on the text board, I think Micah Parsons is the best kept secret in the draft and could even go as high as 6 to Miami. That's from Matt Green. How about Sean Lee retiring today? Does that put Parsons in play for Dallas?
Yeah, I don't know, because they still, Sean Lee was their third linebacker. He was only playing in base. I mean, they had Leighton Vander Esch. They drafted him in the first round, and they had Jalen Smith, who wound up being a pretty good player for them, got a big contract a couple of years ago. I think he probably didn't play his best football last year, and Vander Esch got hurt. And he has that history, I think, with the neck. But I just don't think that's the position they're going to look to upgrade more so than cornerback or D end.
All right. I think we're out of time, unfortunately. We have a lot of questions we didn't
get fast.
To. Yeah, well, there's a lot of people who have questions, and we're trying to get as many. Geoff will be back on Wednesday, and you can ask more questions then. What's this new nickname here? Geoff the Rock Mosher.
I've always, 20 pounds ago when I was in college, I could raise the eyebrow, and some people would say there was a time where I would get some comparisons facially to The Rock and Derek Jeter, but those were years and pounds ago, my friend.
Okay. He'll be back on Wednesday. Andrew's in tomorrow. The guys did their mock draft on the Inside the Birds podcast that dropped this morning. Andrew, Geoff and Adam did the mock draft. That is today's version of Inside the Birds, the podcast. It dropped at 6 o'clock. So if you want to hear their mock draft, check that out this morning. Andrew will be on tomorrow. Geoff is back Wednesday. I just got an email from Adam. I don't know if he's switching this week or not, but he'll be on one of the days later on in the week. And we'll have it all right here, football at 4. And then don't forget, as soon as the draft's over, we got all off-season. I don't know. Are they doing OTAs? What's going on with that?
We'll see. I mean, I think there's a lot to be settled between now and then as far as how many players are going to be showing up and for what. So we'll see about that.
Real quick.
And don't forget also, myself, Adam Kaplan, and Greg Cosell, 5:30 to 7:30 Thursday night, are Inside the Draft preview. We'll be doing a 2-hour draft preview special. So a lot of intel.
I was just going to say real quick, tell the people what the rest of the week looks like over on the Inside the Birds platform. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday draft. What do you got for the rest of all the way through? You have something going Friday too?
Yeah, well, we've got every day. Like tomorrow, instead of Q&A doing their own show, they're going to join Quentin Michael and Jason Avant will join me and Adam. We're going to do a little 45-minute roundtable type show or square screen show here on Zoom. Kind of going through the draft, the state of the team. So that instead of Q&A in our live stream that we've been doing, we're just going to do that. So that'll be out probably Wednesday morning. We'll record it tomorrow. And then our pre-draft show, 2 hours, me, Adam Kaplan, Greg Cosell from Evil Genius Brew House in Fishtown. And we will do a live stream on draft night, Thursday night, after the pick is made, probably soon after. We'll dig in a little bit, then have it. And then Friday, we'll do another on our YouTube platform, another show, probably a live stream after the third round. Saturday, we'll recap it all with a show on our YouTube channel. And then Sunday, it's business as usual. The podcast will drop, we'll record the podcast Sunday night and it'll drop 6 a.m. Monday.
All right.
We'll do a depth chart on that one. After the picks are made, you got to do a depth chart, Mike.
I am all for it. And I am all for football at 4. By the way, Adam Kaplan will be on this Friday. And then following this week, he will be on Thursdays for the rest of the offseason. All right.
All right.
Geoff Mosher, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, Mosher, I'll talk to you.
Take care, brother.
He'll be back on Wednesday's show. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. And, of course, the Sports Bash is brought to you this hour by our friends over at Prop Swap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit at PropSwap.com or download the Prop Swap app today. So there's a lot of odds out there on the NFL draft, including who the Eagles would take with the first pick at pick 12. You can go buy that right now at PropSwap. Like if you think they're going to take J.C. Horn, there's a ticket on PropSwap right now. You can go buy that. If you think they're going to take Waddle or Smith, you can go buy that prop right now at PropSwap.com. It's a great way. The NFL Draft is one of their busiest events. It's the March Madness, it's the Masters, and it's the NFL Draft. They are their 3 biggest prop swap days. If you are not using Prop Swap for the draft, you are missing out on money. PropSwap.com. Download the Prop Swap app today. All right, a little bit of breaking news with the Phillies. They have made a flurry of roster moves, and one of them includes purchasing the contract of Odubel Herrera. So Herrera is up with the Phillies, and I would imagine, I don't have their lineup in front of me yet, that he would be in the lineup tonight because one of the guys who got sent down is Mickey Moniak. So Moniak is down and Herrera is up. So the Phillies have decided to bring up Odubel Herrera, and I would imagine they don't have the lineup out yet, but he is up. Moniak is down. Some of the other moves that the Phillies made today, Jose Alvarado has been activated from the COVID list. Matt Moore has been activated from the COVID list. And Spencer Howard was sent back to AAA. Mickey Moniak was optioned to the alternate site. The one question is with Odubel Herrera is they had to make a 40-man move to bring him up to the roster. I'm not sure who is on the 40-man roster or who has been removed from the 40-man roster. But Odubel Herrera has been promoted to the Phillies big league team. And by the way, some more breaking news is from Keith Pompey. The expectation is that Ben Simmons will play tonight for the 76ers. So you have that. Scott Lauber just tweeted out 2 minutes ago, Joe Girardi on the return of Odubel Herrera. We just thought it was time. That's what Girardi said, a.k.a. our center fielders are hitting 101. Look, I know there's so many people out there who will say he does not belong in the league for what he did, and I can certainly understand that. However, he is eligible by the league, and the Phillies, do they owe it to themselves? By the way, Herrera is in the lineup. It's Miller, Hoskins, Harper, Real Muto, Gregorius, Bohm, Herrera, Nick Maton, Zach Wheeler. That is your lineup tonight. So Herrera is in the lineup, and he will bat seventh, play center field. You know, I did a 10 predictions for the Phillies season, and one of them was I thought he would be up and be the starting center fielder by the All-Star break. Well, we're a lot earlier than that. The Phillies center field situation has been so bad. Miller's leading off. I don't know how many times that's happened, but he's playing left field. So it's Miller in left, Hoskins. So they're giving McCutchen the night off and playing Miller in left, and they're leading him off. Hoskins is hitting 2, Harper hitting 3, Real Muto is catching, Gregorius at short, Bohm at third, Herrera is in center hitting 7th, Nick Maton playing second base tonight because Jane Segura is still on the injured list. So there you go. That is your Phillies lineup tonight. So 2 breaking news. One with the Sixers. The expectation is that Ben Simmons will play tonight. And 2, that Odubel Herrera is called up and he is in the lineup tonight. He is hitting in the 7 hole and playing center field. So the Phillies make a plethora. Now, I do not know who the 40-man move is. I have to try to find that out. We're going to see if we can track down Frank and see if he has that information. Now, coming up, my conversation with Bob Wankel. Now, full disclosure with my conversation with Bob Wankel is we spoke earlier in the day before this move. So you will not hear us really talk about Odubel Herrera in this conversation. He had a prior engagement, so we had to record this interview a little earlier in the day. But luckily, we got the news out there now. Herrera is up. He is in the lineup tonight. But Bob and I talked a lot about the bullpen problems and the 4 and 5 spots in the rotation problems. So we have all that, plus Herrera is up. We will continue to get into that. 609-403-0973. Bob Wankel from Crossing Broad talks Phillies next. All right, 5 o'clock hour here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, brought to you by your Delaware Valley Acura dealers. Great deal on Acura's award-winning lineup. Shop online at DelValAcuraDealers.com. So we got the breaking news with the Phillies. Odubel Herrera is up, hitting 7th and playing center field in the lineup tonight. How do you guys feel about that? 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Phils have been kind of tough to watch. You know, we just talked about it with Bob, about a 500 feel to them, right? They feel like a 500 team. They've got 2 good starting pitchers, 1 good, not great starting pitcher. You got Wheeler and Nola, then you have Eflin. The back 2 have been terrible. The center field situation, they've hit 101 combined. The 3 guys in center field have hit 101. Horrible. McCutcheon's been terrible. Segura, the one guy who has been producing, hurt. DD had been hurt. So it's not a really good baseball team right now. We talked about earlier that the bullpen should be much better. And by the way, they are much better. Their ERA was in the 7s last year. Well, they're in the 4s right now. I mean, the 5s right now. So, that's a big difference. And offensively, they've just been so inconsistent. Rhys Hoskins goes 2 longer stretches, and then he hits a couple of home runs in a game that doesn't, surprise me, where it's like, all right, you're going to hit 2 home runs in a game like he did on Saturday. I think it was Saturday. And he'll go 0 for 18 to lead up to that. So inconsistent. Real Muto hasn't done much. Now, keep in mind, the leadoff man has not been on base all that much this year. But Odubel Herrera in the 7th spot, Nick Matos in the 8th spot tonight. Look, I think Girardi, he was asked about it. What do you think about this? He said it was time. I think he was basically at the position where he was saying it's time to stop throwing these other guys out there. So the other guys hitting 101 is why Herrera is here. It has nothing to do with what Herrera has done because, quite frankly, he hit 4 home runs in the minors, in spring training, and everybody will say, well, he hit 4 home runs. He hit like 230. He was not very consistent, and he wasn't very good in 2018 and 2019 either. So let's not sit here and think that this team has, hey, they just entered an all-star into the lineup. He made the all-star game in 2016. Think about what your life was like in 2016. That's the last time that Odubel Herrera was any good. Now, it is not my place to sit here and tell you whether I think he deserves to be here. I said at the time I would have just got rid of him. The problem was they owed him so much money, they could not do that. You have all sorts of penalties with the league and the Players Association. So under the rules of Major League Baseball, the Phillies owe it to themselves to explore the best possible scenarios. You could be mad at baseball. You could be mad at baseball for saying, hey, he served an 85-game suspension, and that maybe you didn't think that was enough, but that's what you got. He got an 85-game suspension. He served the penalty. He did not play last year. The Phillies penalized him again last year. They did not play him at all last year. So you can really say he served an 85-game suspension plus another 60-game suspension last year. Now, me personally, I said I would have cut him immediately. I would have definitely got rid of him, but I understand the consequences of the financials. Sometimes principles more than the financials. The whole situation with his then girlfriend, I don't know if they're married now or not. She dropped all the charges. That complicates things as well. Baseball suspended him 85 games. The Phillies also did not play him last year. So you have a lot involved here. But Joe Girardi explaining why the Phillies called up Odubel Herrera, and he will be in the lineup tonight. Take a listen.
Well, I think our biggest concern when we left spring training is he had not had that many at-bats in the last couple of years. And we were concerned about some inconsistencies and just not having a whole lot of playing time. So he went and got 50 or 60 at-bats down there. We feel better about where he's at. We just felt it was time. to give him an opportunity to be our center fielder. And he is here today. We sent Mickey out. And, I think for Mickey probably put a little bit too much upon himself with the opportunity. And I think Mickey's going to be a good player for a long time here. I think there's a lot of talent in that young man, and I think we will see him again. But we just thought it was time to give Odubel his opportunity.
So there you go. I mean, essentially, I think we wanted to get him more at bats. He got 50 at bats at the alternate site. Come on, you're not telling me that getting 50 at bats at the alternate site was the reason why he's up here and you feel better. No, that's not why. The other guys hit 101. That's why. They wanted to have Herrera essentially. I don't think they wanted to start the season with Herrera up here. I think they wanted to continue to see if the other guys could do it before they had to acquiesce and go to Herrera. Let's bring Frank Close in. He's on the Boardwalk Honda hotline, and he joins me now here on the Sports Bash. All right, Frank, we tracked you down. We got you. I know you were the one guy who was right, by the way, who said they were not going to bring him up on the major league roster. I don't know who the 40-man move is. Have you seen that at this point?
There doesn't need to be one at the moment because Adam Hastley is technically off the 40-man roster. So he can slip in right for now. The Phillies do have Simone Muzziotti on the restricted list as well. You got to think at some point he'll come back and they'll need to make a move.
Okay, so that's good information out of you. Because I'm, it's happening in the moment. I did not realize Hastley. I forgot he is on the.
I will say too, with all the COVID guys right now, technically they don't occupy the 40-man either. So there's a little maneuverability.
Right now, Alvarado was on the COVID list. He's now up. Moore was on the COVID list. He's now up. Who's still on the COVID list? Do you have that off the head?
Great question. I guess that would be Torreyes then. I think he's the only one left out of the active roster.
So Moore is up. Alvarado's up. Howard is back. Now, I thought Girardi brought up some interesting things about Howard today. He said they're going to try to stretch him out. Essentially, he might be starting games sooner than later, it sounds like, because their initial wonky plan with him doesn't seem to be working. Moore is awful. Anderson's not very good. They got to have another option in that spot, and maybe Howard's it.
Yeah, I think they're reversing their position on this. Their original position was we don't want to make it so that we use all his innings up and then later in the season that you don't have him. So I honestly I think it makes more sense. Get him going right now. You absolutely need him. And then maybe you can make a move in July if you need to patch things up. But, remember a few years ago, many years ago at this point, I guess, Steven Strasburg with the Nationals, they limited his innings and the Nationals didn't have him for the playoffs. And that seems silly. So I think now they're realizing that they need a good Spencer Howard in the rotation now more than they're worried about September at the moment.
All right. Tonight, Herrera will play center field and bat seventh. Are you surprised that they find? I mean, it didn't take long. It was about 20 games before they made this decision. You didn't think it was going to happen.
Well, you know what? Once Adam Hastley disappeared, and I mean that with all due respect. I mean he was no longer in the equation, right? So then all of a sudden.
And by the way, this isn't hey, you were wrong. It was you didn't think he was going to be here because, and now you're explaining some things have happened.
Yeah,
that have changed.
I just tweeted a few minutes ago, like for this to happen, 4 guys had to fail. Hastley, Quinn, Kingery, Moniak. That's a big deal when you talk about a 25-man roster and 4 players can't get the job done. It really had to come to all that. And I think the Phillies are just reaching a point where they need to make moves. You see Brad Miller starting in left, because Andrew McCutcheon's not hitting, so they're going to put Miller in the outfield today. So I think they're realizing it's time to start doing some things. And to be honest with you, I think this also shows that as soon as Herrera is in, if he fails to, they'll go somewhere else. I think they're at a point now where they mean business, and the guys weren't getting it done. I mean, who would have thought Roman Quinn would be that bad? Or if you went to Mickey Moniak in a pinch, he would be that bad, right? So, and I still think they think highly of him, and Kingery's just completely fallen off the face of the earth. So. This is really a lot had to happen for this move to be made.
All right. So 2016, Herrera makes an all-star game. He was their best player, essentially, for 2 seasons. He was better in 16. He was still okay in 17.
Yeah, somehow he beat out David Lowe and Cedric Hunter to make the all-star team.
In 18 and 19, he really starts to drop off. I mean, I was at the point in 18 and 19, I was get him out of the lineup. He stinks. So spring training, he gets 52 at-bats, shows a little power, 230. What Odubel Herrera, what does he offer this team, if anything?
He's just another guy. And you know what? He's next on the list after 4. Like, again, after 4 failed, he's the next one on the list. So I think at this point, they're like, okay, come up.
Right. So let me
you're bad.
Let me ask you this question. Then, Frank. They gave – now, Hastley's a different situation. He kind of had an issue. He left the team. Nobody really knows why or what happened there. Fine. Roman Quinn has gotten less than 20 games. Moniak got less than 10 games. So how many games does Herrera get to show that he can play?
That's a great question. I mean, I think they've already made the statement that they don't feel the obligation to keep him if he's not useful. And to them, 222 at spring training showed he wasn't useful. Joe Girardi called him inconsistent. They can't handle inconsistency. I mean, I think they're hoping that he comes up and has a few good games. But if I was with you all along, Mike. I mean, I think we're the two voices that didn't particularly love his performance in 2018 and 2019 before any of the other issues. So, he's the type of guy he could go 3 for 4 one day and drive in a couple of runs, and then the next 4 games goes 0 for 12, right? So I think they're just hoping to catch him on some of the good days because they need something, anything, right? So we're at the point in the season that, the Phillies aren't capitalizing. The Braves just lost a doubleheader to the Arizona Diamondbacks, right? They were supposed to be not necessarily in contention, right? So Braves are kind of falling apart. The Mets haven't really created any distance either ahead of them. The Nationals have their issues. Strasburg's hurt again. The Phillies need to capitalize on this right now. They just can't go any longer. So they're trying to catch lightning in a bottle, I guess.
I want to because again, I just went over. I don't know how many games Quinn has got to prove his worth, but it wasn't more than 20. They haven't even played 20. Moniak got less than 10. Was this all just a dog and pony show and just say we wanted Herrera here, but we didn't want to have him start the season? We wanted him to serve some penalty.
No, I don't think this has anything to do with that. I really do think it was a baseball decision. And when you looked at the other 4 guys, all the upside, I mean, I honestly think Adam Hastley, if he was around, he could at least hit you 225 that you could live with. Roman Quinn, he's never been this bad. He's had some months where he's hit 100 in his career, but you expected more than this. And, I think even after that bad base running decision the other night, he'd thrown out a third. In a way, I think they're kind of over him at this point. So, talented guy, 223 hitter on his career, but he's given them absolutely nothing. I mean, he's got a negative .2 WAR at this point this year, right? So, in other words, any player off the bench is better than him. Except the problem is all the players off the bench are even worse than that. So, they had to do something to get this team going. They're that far down. They're starting to show they're a little bit desperate, I think, in some ways with some of these moves, but. Again, Miller's in left leading off. You have Herrera in the lineup now. They're really, really trying here to see what they can do to sort of jumpstart this team and take advantage of the fact that some of these other teams in the division really aren't separating themselves either.
Yeah, I do want to remind people, Herrera hit 222 with 1 home run in 2019 when he got suspended. And he was hitting 255 with 22 home runs. If he hits 255 with 22 home runs, which is what he hit in 2018 in the 7-hole, wouldn't the team be doing backflips?
Yeah, and honestly, that's passable, but at the same time, too, like this guy hasn't played against Major League hitting on any regular basis in a long time. So, but you're almost on the 2-year anniversary of that, right? Because that was Memorial Day weekend 2019. So, I remain skeptical that he's going to hit Major League pitching with any consistency with that long a layoff. I mean, that's a pretty big layoff.
Oh, there's no doubt. And look, people forget he served an 85-game suspension in 19. The Phillies also didn't. I mean, so you could essentially say they suspended him, quote unquote, again last year. I mean, They didn't play him for 60 games last season. I mean, they could have. Under the rules of baseball, he was eligible, and the Phillies chose not to play him last year. So you could say that not only did he serve an 85-game suspension, the Phillies penalized him again.
Well, I think the problem was, he didn't get a chance to really show that he was worthy of it for baseball reasons. I mean, the Phillies did say pretty straightforward back then last spring 2020 that Herrera, really needs to demonstrate that he can perform at the level again. I mean, they said he was not good when even when he got arrested. And then even after a suspension, right, he didn't play all that time. He's got to show that he can still hit major league pitching. I mean, that's a long time to be out. And of course, last year, who knows what would have happened if the season wasn't truncated in the way it was. But even last year, they had more up and comer outfielders that they could use, and they didn't really feel the need. And really, Adam Hazley's absence really did. I want to say mess things up because I don't want to fault him if it sounds like it's a serious issue, but when you subtract somebody like Adam Hazley, who you really believed had a good amount of upside, you're just down you go down the list, right? So
I mean, the way you kind of map it out, I think there's a thought on both sides. The way you mapped it out was like 4 things had to happen. Kingery was horrible. He took himself out. Hazley had an unfortunate situation. That kind of brought him out. Quinn has been terrible, and Moniak has been terrible. Now, you can make the argument that neither Quinn nor Moniak has been given a fair shake. I don't know. I mean, is that fair to say? Because then Girardi said today, well, we didn't think he got enough at-bats, so we wanted him to get more at-bats. He got 50 at-bats at the alternate site. To me, that kind of that to me is the dog. Oh, I got 50 at bats, so now we think he's ready. I mean, come on. So 50 at bats, he's ready. The other guys didn't get 50 at bats, but they stink.
Yeah, that's a very valid point you make. I mean, I think there still is some sentiment that they really did not want him back. They don't want to appear they're endorsing the type of behavior he was accused of. But
right, I think there was definitely a moral wrestling match going on here.
I think so, and let's be very honest. There will be a lot of fans that are happy to see him, and many that are not happy to see him. So it's also a PR kind of nightmare too for them as well, because there will be some people that are very upset. And let's face it too. People that have been victims of domestic violence, when they encounter people that they're familiar with the allegation, right? I'm not going to say he did it or didn't do it, because I certainly was not present, and he was acquitted. But just his presence is enough to sort of bring back those memories for people that might have been victims. And so some people will be very, very upset that this happened, just because they're reminded perhaps of their own violence in their own life. So this very delicate situation here to walk. I really think that it would have served all parties better if Herrera had asked for his release and was given his release a while back, that he could have sort of, started anew somewhere else, and the Phillies could have started anew with somebody else. But so I think they were in some respects trying to avoid this, if at all possible. But again, for baseball reasons now, they're really stuck. I mean, this isn't the time of year where you can trade for somebody to play center field. You usually need to wait till teams are out of it. That could still happen down the line if they can find a move before the July 31st trade deadline. They might do so. But again, if Herrera doesn't provide value on the baseball field at this point, they have no reason other than to cut him.
All right, there you go. The breaking news: the Phillies have called up Odubel Herrera. He's batting 7th and playing center field tonight. Moniak has been sent down. Howard has been sent down. Alvarado is up. So we'll hopefully see the bullpen get a little bit. They're the worst bullpen in baseball again, or the National League again, over 5 ERA. So you lost a couple pieces. But that being said, the bullpen has been shaky. The back end of the rotation, really shaky. Center field, really bad. Leadoff, been bad. So let's see how Herrera goes. He's in the lineup tonight, hitting 7th. All right, Frank, thanks for jumping on, man.
No problem. Anytime, Mike.
All right, he'll be on tomorrow with the mailbag. We'll get a little bit more in depth with his Phillies conversation, but him jumping on board for the Herrera news, like all guests appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, when we come back, Geoff Kerr will talk a little NFL draft with us next here on the Sports Bash. All right, coming up at 5:55, I got another Sports Bash cash code word, so stick around. That is worth $1,000 right now. Geoff Kerr, CBS Sports, covers the NFL draft is this Thursday night. Round 1 coverage begins at 7 o'clock on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. We'll have it for you every pick live. And Geoff Kerr joins me now on the Boardwalk Honda hotline as we do this on a Monday. I know our minds could be changed by the time we get to Thursday. However, let's start off on a Monday, Geoff. What are the Eagles doing on Thursday? That's the number one question I get everywhere I go is what are the Eagles doing Thursday? What are they doing?
Well, according to Kyle Shanahan, we don't even know if we're going to be alive by Thursday. So I guess the answer is who knows at this point. I mean, my guess right is they trade up and try to get one of those big 3 receivers. I don't think Jamar Chase will be there, but Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, yeah, I think that's who they go for.
So that's your Monday prediction is that they move up to go get one of the receivers. That's what you're going with.
48 hours from now, that will probably change. But yeah, so right now is a Monday at 5:27 p.m. That's what I'm going with.
All right, so the Eagles are reportedly looking to move back into the top 10. You think it's for a wide receiver. Others would say if they are to move up into the top 10, it's for Kyle Pitts.
That, if he's available, that's who I would get. If he's available. I actually think he'll be gone by 6, which is kind of ironic considering the Eagles traded out of 6. But I think either Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts or both will be gone by 7, which is where ideally I think the Eagles should trade up to because Detroit is probably looking to trade down. They're not drafting a quarterback. They need a bunch of help. I mean, they could draft one of those wide receivers there, but if they can get better value for the 7th pick in a rebuilding year for them, I think they're going to do that. Honestly, I think Kyle Pitts will go to the Falcons at 4. Unless Atlanta trades down. So I'm expecting him off the board. I'm expecting the Bengals to take Penei Sewell, but if they take Jamar Chase, that will completely ruin whatever chances the Eagles have at this draft. And then we got a different conversation happening. But yeah, if Kyle Pitts is on the board at 7 or 8, you're the Eagles, you got to trade up and you got to get him.
He's the one guy I would trade up for as well, I think. If I'm trading up for 1, if I can only pick 1, he would be the 1. There's other guys I might, but if you say you can only pick 1 trade up, he would be the 1. Let me throw this scenario at you. All right, I was having fun with this earlier. Atlanta's at 4. They pick at 4, but they don't take a quarterback, right? You got that so far?
Okay.
All right. Now Philly's on the board at 12, and 2 quarterbacks are there. Atlanta has picked 35. Would you ask them to flip with you for their first-round pick next year? So you get 2 second-rounders this year and another first-rounder next year.
You said quarterback or cornerback?
Quarterback, passer.
Okay, so which quarterbacks are going to be on the board? Now I'm intrigued.
But, I mean, so do you think Atlanta, if you're Howie Roseman, you say, look, there's teams that want – because I think it's being reported that he's calling teams that are quarterback needy. Let's say Atlanta says, we don't want one at 4. Hey, at 12, are you still interested? We'll take your first-round pick next year. Give us that second round. So then you would have 35 and 37, I think it is.
I would be intrigued for sure. I mean, why not? Because you can still get value at 35 and 37. You can get decent playmakers there. And again, I think one of those receivers could be there at 37 as well, or heck, even 35, like a Terrence Marshall or a Rondale Moore or an Elijah Moore. I mean, in my mock draft, I had 7 wide receivers going in the first round, but I don't think we've had that since 2004, and I think that's the only time we've ever had that. So I don't know if that's actually going to be possible, but there are definitely 7 or 8 wide receivers that are worthy of a first-round grade.
Right, and if you don't, like a lot of people would say, wow, I'm not getting a first-round pick in a year that I only won 4 games, and that's hard to swallow. But you're getting 2 picks in the top of the second round. You could still get Asante Samuel, Rashad Bateman. So you could end up with a good corner and a good wideout and have 4 first-round picks next season.
I see, that's the thing. I think 2021 is going to be a wash anyway. So say they do that. You get 4 first-round picks next year. I mean, 3 guaranteed. That's the key thing. Howie Roseman has always pointed out, we got the guaranteed first-round pick with the Dolphins trade. So you do that. Okay. You get 4 first-round picks next year.
Yeah.
You're assuming one of them is going to be in the top 10, maybe their pick, and then maybe there's another pick in the top 10. All of a sudden, you might be in business for a Sam Howell of North Carolina in 2022. So Yeah, it's very intriguing, no doubt. And again, like you said, Mike, you can get a good cornerback like Asante Samuel. You could maybe Greg Newsome falls, maybe an offensive lineman falls, and you take him. Who knows? But at the end of the day, the Eagles are going to have 11 picks in this draft, but they're not going to use all 11 of them. They're going to find a way to maneuver.
So, Geoff, they have 12. Same scenario. If quarterbacks fall to 12, you're Roseman. You're calling New England, Chicago, Washington, New Orleans, Pittsburgh, right? You're making those calls. So if there's a quarterback at 12, what's the more likely scenario? That they make a trade or they pick at 12?
If Justin Fields is there at 12, I'm picking them. Forget those teams.
Boy.
If he falls to 12, I'm sorry, Jalen Hurts. I love you, but you got to pick the quarterback. You got to pick him. I actually think Justin Fields is the second best quarterback in this draft over Zach Wilson. I can't believe teams aren't feeling the same way on this, but hey, they're a little more qualified than me on quarterback evaluation. But
I mean, doesn't that just add another headache to this?
It does. But that's the problem, though. Like, who would have ever thought Justin Fields would be there at 12? If it's Mac Jones at 12, no, I don't pick him. And I like Mac Jones, but no, you don't pick him. You just ride with Jalen Hurts. But if it's Justin Fields, yes. But at the same time, look, if you're New England, if you're offering a future first, maybe 2 future firsts just to move up 3 spots, highly unlikely.
Highly unlikely.
But again,
I think the most likely scenario is 12, there's a quarterback. I'm Howie Roseman. I'm calling the Bears. Pace has to win this year. So what the hell does he care if he gives up a first rounder next year?
Yeah,
right?
He ain't going to be using that pick.
Well, right. He's got to get a quarterback in this. He can't go into a season with Andy Dalton. You can't do that. If you know your job's on the line, you can't put your job on the line with Andy Dalton. You can't do that. So I'm Philadelphia. I am pressuring that. Look, you know your job's on the line. I'll give you 12, but you have to give me that pick. And if this pick doesn't work out, you're fired anyway. Who cares?
Exactly. Look, Mike, we can even make the case Nick Foles should be starting over Andy Dalton next year. So that's how bad the Andy Dalton situation is. So, yeah, I'm calling the Bears. Maybe I'm calling the team, maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers. Who knows? Maybe they move up from 24 to 12 to say, hey, look, here's a golden opportunity for us to get a quarterback. And Ben Roethlisberger's not going to be here forever. So, maybe you get them to fetch away a first and a second or something like that to move up that many spots. Again, there's going to be so many teams that are going to be desperate for that last quarterback. And, again, if it's at 12, the Eagles are in business here. I mean, that's the only way I would consider trading down. I'll tell you what I wouldn't do. Trade down 3 spots with the Patriots, and the Patriots go draft Devonta Smith if he's still on the board.
If Horn, Smith, Waddle, all there at 12, rank those.
Luxury of riches. I think I would go Devonta Smith. I would, but I would not be upset if they drafted J.C. Horn because they need a cornerback, and Spotters has got the NFL pedigree. I think J.C. Horn is going to be a very good cornerback in this league. You have Darius Slay, you have J.C. Horn. I can get behind that, but I'm taking Devonta Smith. I'm trying to help Jalen Hurts as much as I can. No disrespect to Jalen Reagor. I think he's a good player. But again, we haven't seen much out of J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. We know what he is. Travis Fulgham, we really aren't sure what he is. That's why I think you go with Devonta Smith. And everybody keeps saying, don't draft a receiver that high. I'm like, well, the ones you do draft that high are usually pretty good.
All right, this is a good question from one of our viewers who says, Geoff, most years one player falls further than expected. Character, medical, outside of a quarterback. Who do you think that player is this year?
This is a good one. Let's see. Well, do you consider Micah Parsons falling to 12 like a fall? Is that a fall?
I only think it's a fall because he's probably a top 10 player. If he plays last year and he has buzz about his 2020 season, we probably think he's a top 10 guy.
Well, he's the best defensive player in the draft, and in most years, I think he goes top 5. I mean, but again, a lot of these teams need quarterback. So, yeah, we'll go Micah Parsons on that if he falls to 12. I mean, I think that's going to be a steal for whoever gets him, whether it's Eagles. I think if he falls to the Giants at 11, that's a golden pick for the Giants there. Micah Parsons should probably not be going any lower than 9 to the Denver Broncos, but the way this board's playing, that might be the case.
All right, couple more questions. Matt, do you guys think the Eagles will draft a running back at one of their 11 picks, or they probably will only draft 8 guys?
Well, let's see. They got 11 picks. They might draft 1. I mean, right now they got Miles Sanders. They got Boston Scott, Jordan Howard. I'm assuming Jordan Howard's going to make this team. I know it's a non-guaranteed contract, and he does fit well with Miles Sanders, but Nick Sirianni likes to use 2 running backs, and I know Travis Etienne was in Philly. I can't confirm whether he visited the Novacare complex or not or anything like that, but he was in Philly last week. So maybe the Eagles are interested in him. I doubt they pick a running back that high, but there are going to be a couple guys there. The running back from Mississippi State, I like Kylan Hill. That would be a guy I would probably take a flyer on in the 4th or 5th round.
Let's throw a couple other things out there that potentially, could happen here. We obviously know that at number 12, you're in a spot where you can move up, back, indifferent. But the one thing with Zach Ertz, any value on draft day? Anything? Or is he just a throw-in to maybe push someone's pile?
What if you want to move up from 12 to 8 and you say, we'll give you Zach Ertz? Carolina, you need a tight end. Ian Thomas is your tight end. Zach Ertz is one of 2 tight ends to have 300 catches, 4,000 yards, and 20 touchdowns over the last 4 years. The other one, Travis Kelce. It's very intriguing. He could be a throw-in somewhere instead of giving up picks. You give up a player. So, I think that's some
another draft night wrinkle of we know all they could go up back, but the Ertz thing is still kind of lingering out there of what happens with him, right? So, all right, here's another question for you from Harris. Hey, Geoff, are Deshaun and Devonta Smith similar in terms of size? Would you consider him a mini D-Jack? He's actually 6'1", D-Jack's 5'10", but I think D-Jack probably weighs more than he does.
I think he does too. I think Devonta Smith's more of a polished route runner than Deshaun ever was. The more comparison I see to a Deshaun Jackson this draft, and he's a lot taller than Deshaun Jackson, is Jalen Waddle because of the breakaway speed. But I would compare a Jalen Waddle to a Tyreek Hill. So yeah, I mean, again, Deshaun was what, 170, 175 when he was drafted in 2008. But again, he wasn't a first-round pick either. He was number 49 pick in the draft. He was taken after Trevor Lawrence. We all know how he ended up. So yeah, I mean, I don't see similar parts of their game. I think this is the amazing thing about Devonta Smith. The guy just doesn't drop passes. He only dropped 7 passes in his college career. 2.69% of catchable passes he dropped. So that's really good. So yeah, it's a lot different than just Jackson for sure. I wouldn't compare the two.
Yeah, I know. The Waddle Smith stuff is interesting because obviously they were the same team. Smith wins the Heisman. He was highly productive. You might say, why not Waddle? Well, he was injured. And I think Geoff, and you might know more about this than me, but if you had the Alabama offensive coaching staff and got to ask them point blank, who's better, they might tell you Waddle.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Before Waddle broke his foot, he was going to win the Heisman. He was literally on I think it was a 42 catch, I forget how many receiving yards he had, but it was 560. I think he had over 140 receiving yards in his first 4 games before he got hurt. And obviously he came back in the national championship game, which was a miracle in that. And I think he had 3 catches for 39 yards or something around that range. But yeah, I think overall in terms of talent, it's hard to tell because, Waddle was the better player for 2 years, but Devonta Smith's been produced since he was a freshman. He produced in the national championship game as a true freshman. Maybe they're just both equally that good. It's just, pick poison.
Right. You had Ruggs and Judy the year before, and people were debating on which one of those 2 guys did you like better. Did you like Ruggs? Did you like Judy? Neither one of them turned out to be anything special in the NFL this particular. And this is what I keep telling people.
I would argue Judy. I think I think he had a pretty good year last year, despite who his quarterback was.
Oh, no, look, I thought he had a solid year, but neither, even Ruggs was okay, but neither one of them was, whoa, look at that guy. You got something here. They both were under 1,000 yards. They both have quarterback challenges, Judy more than Ruggs. But the point I'm making is we had somebody message earlier. They should have stayed at 6. They should have, just because you take the first receiver in the draft doesn't mean you're getting the best receiver.
Oh, exactly. What if the Eagles take Jamar Chase at 6 and he doesn't end up being the Julio Jones or anybody we think he's going to be? I think ultimately, I'm going to look at it this way. If the Eagles trade up to 7 or 8 and still keep that first-round pick, you got a first-round pick and you only traded 2 spots down. That's how you got to look at this thing. Trading up from 12 to 8 isn't like trading down from 6 to 12. It's because you're not giving up that much. You have 2 third-round picks. You can use one of them as capital. You'll probably have to give up a 5th or a 6th-round pick. Big deal. To move up a couple spots, I'll take it.
Yeah, especially this year where the 5th round, you're not getting nearly as much talent as you have.
Being an undrafted free agent, essentially.
For the most part, yeah. that's a good point that you make, is to go from 12 up to 8. You're not giving up a first to go up there. You've given up a third, maybe. To move back 6 spots, you got a first-round pick. That's unbelievable value.
And that is the one thing Howie Roseman does well. Now, where Howie Roseman makes the right pick or not, we can debate this all night. But in terms of maneuvering on draft day, he's made 34 draft day-esque trades since becoming the general manager or executive vice president football operator, whatever his title was, since 2010. The guy does know how to wheel and deal. It's just
there's no question.
Yeah, whether he makes the right pick. That's all it is right now. Can he make the right pick? Can he pick the right receiver? Kyle Pitts is the surefire thing. Kyle Pitts isn't as good as we think he's going to be, I'm going to give up draft evaluation because I just don't see how this guy's going to be bad in the NFL.
I would agree with that, but I remember when Vernon Davis was coming out, and he was something different, man. It was, this guy's unbelievable for a tight end, and Vernon Davis wasn't.
Okay, yeah.
He kept getting hurt. He was one of those guys that was almost in too good a shape, if that's possible. Like, he always getting hurt because his body was so tightly wound that he just couldn't keep the hamstrings and the he had all those muscle problems. But yeah, Pitts, to me, he would be the one guy. If you told me pick one to trade up for, Pitts would be my guy that I would to go up and get. Other than that, I think I stay at 12 and I take Horn.
That's I would agree there. By the way, you're talking about the surefire tight ends. Remember when Kyle Brady came out of Penn State? Everybody thought he was going to be like that next guy, and it turned out, he was okay too. So yeah, it almost seems like this is the perfect time for a guy like Kyle Pitts who can play the X, who can play the slot, who can tight end. I'll tell you what, I gotta give. Look, if the Eagles find a way to get Kyle Pitts, and they trade up to 8 to get him, I'm going to be more than thrilled. And I do get the people that say, hey, look, why don't you just leave it at 6? I'm like, well, you got the extra first-round pick out of the deal. But again, we'll have to see how this board plays out. No doubt about it.
Look, this is like, I kind of liken this to what the Sixers did. They missed on a lot of picks, but guess what? They did get Joel Embiid. And having Joel Embiid is the difference between being a finals contender and just being in the mix for the 8 seed. Howie Roseman might get a lot of other picks right, but he's got to find his Joel Embiid in these picks here. He's got to find that 1 or 2 of these 4 first-round picks. This one and the 3 next year, he's got to get an impact guy. And then I would have to say, like Henke, he's got to get the MVP level guy and then starters. He's got to find starters.
And that's his draft. There's a good chance one of these 4 first-round picks over the next 2 years is going to be a quarterback. Again, this is if Jalen Hurts doesn't do what we think he's going to do. But even if he's not, you got to hit on at least 2 of those picks and get him some playmakers. Get him a stud offensive, get him a stud receiver, get him something. The stud receiver should come this year, or Kyle Pitts, whoever that is. Then you can work on defense. You can work on impact players. But the top half of the first round, especially this draft, the top 15 picks, they are impact players, whether they're offensive linemen, not defensive linemen this year, but quarterback, receiver. Look, quarterback, this is a golden year for the Eagles, who really don't need to draft a quarterback unless it falls to them, because so many teams are desperate for this franchise signal caller. If 5 quarterbacks go in the first 10 picks, the Eagles are in business.
Geoff Kerr, CBS Sports, at Geoff Kerr CBS on Twitter. Back on Wednesday. He'll probably change his mind on what will happen at number 12, but we'll try to find out anyway. All right, man, we'll talk to you then.
You know what? I'll probably change my mind like 5 seconds for the Eagles pick. Oh, wait, no, they should go get this guy.
I'm sure we all will. Well, because we'll have more information.
Well, exactly. We'll actually know who they're picking. I mean, right now, we still don't know who the 49ers are picking. I still think it's a smokescreen, right, the whole Mac Jones thing. But
we'll have more information of what happened in front, so then you can make a more informed spot there. But the intrigue is very big. Geoff, all right, man, Wednesday we'll do it.
Yep, sounds great. Thanks, Mike.
All right, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, when we come back, we got the sound of the day as we get ready to wrap up the show. Don't forget game night tonight. Kevin McCormick live on the Sixers. They're getting ready for a game against Oklahoma City. Who will be in the lineup tonight? McCormick, 6:40 tonight. All right, here we go. Time for the 5 today. Here are the sounds of the day. We had some good stuff. A late addition to the show. Frank Close joined us as the Phillies called up Odubel Herrera and said this.
It's a baseball decision. And when you looked at their 4 guys, all the upside, I mean, I honestly think Adam Hastley, if he was around, he could at least hit you 225 that you could live with. Roman Quinn, he's never been this bad. He's had some months where he's hit 100 in his career, but you expected more than this. And I think even after that bad base running decision the other night, he thrown out a third. In a way, I think they're kind of over him at this point. So, talented guy, 223 hitter on his career, but he's given them absolutely nothing.
All right, so this whole Herrera thing's interesting. You can look at it the way Frank broke it down, that 4 things had to happen. But did they give the guys enough of a chance? Right? I mean, the sample size to me was too small. This looks like it was a dog and pony show.
The sample size is too small, but the reason why I think Frank's point is interesting is because there has to be something going on in that locker room. Remember how we talked about last year with the football? There's no reporters in the locker room, so we don't know what the vibe of the locker room is. Is there maybe a vibe in that locker room where Girardi, maybe told Dombrowski, we got to shake things up in here. We got a problem here.
Well, that's the thing, though. You say that Herrera needed to get more at-bats. 50 at-bats. We thought he got plenty of at-bats. The other guys you said didn't get enough at-bats. They got – how many at-bats does Moniak have? Not that I think they're wrong in their assessment, but did he get a fair number of at-bats? Did Quinn get a fair number of at-bats? But you're saying that Herrera got a fair number of at-bats. Like that doesn't pass the smell test for me. And I say this in that Frank was right the whole time that he didn't think they were going to take him. So I'm kind of conflicted here.
Yeah, to me, there has to be another reason why they called him up aside from just, the other guys weren't playing well. Like Frank said, like Quinn has had bad times, bad stretches before. It's not like this is the first time this has happened. So to me, there's got to be some bigger reason why they're calling him up.
Frank Close on Herrera and what to expect.
This guy hasn't played against Major League hitting on any regular basis in a long time. So, but you're almost on the 2-year anniversary of that, right? Because that was Memorial Day weekend 2019. So I remain skeptical that he's going to hit Major League pitching with any consistency with that long a layoff. I mean, that's a pretty big layoff.
What are we expecting here? I'm not expecting much.
I'm not expecting anything at this point. I mean, to me, I feel like when it comes to Herrera, the only way this guy is going to justify this is if he just goes all out. And you mentioned earlier, Mike, we haven't seen him go all out in 5 years?
He hasn't been good since really 17.
Okay, so 40 years.
Although in 19, he hit 255 with like 15 or something home runs. I mean, if he gives you that out of the 7 hole, I mean, that would be suffice. In 2018, he hit 255 with 22 homers and 71 RBI. I mean, if he gives you that out of the 8 hole, you're taking it. That was 4 years ago, though.
Yeah, the whole thing is just very strange. The timing, the way they went about it.
In 16, he hit 286 with 15 homers and 25 stolen bases. And in 17, he hit 281 with 14 homers. Now, this is a guy that hit number 1 or number 3 in your lineup for the most part. Now you're hitting him in the 7th spot.
Does he maybe hit better if he's in the 7th spot?
That's what I'm asking. I mean, that's what I'm wondering. Now, keep in mind, the center fielder has been hitting in the 8 hole for the most part. Right. There's some injuries right now. So Gene Segura is not here. So maybe Herrera ends up hitting 8th. I don't know. I mean, I think the Phillies, look, I wrote the piece about the 10 predictions on this season, and I had him starting in center field by the All-Star break. We're 20 games in, and he's already up. So I'm a little surprised that they made this move this quickly.
Right. You were thinking maybe like May or June, right? You weren't thinking
All-Star break.
No, I meant you mean you were thinking after the All-Star break?
I said, I think after the All-Star break, they will finally acquiesce and say, we have a problem in center field for the stretch run. Let's bring up this guy who made an All-Star game and see if he gives us a little shot in the arm. Now, I didn't also think the center fielders were going to hit 100.
And you also didn't have Adam Hazley not being there either.
Yeah, the Hazley thing, I thought Frank brought up an interesting point that Hazley, for whatever reason, nobody really knows the whereabouts or what happened to him, but him not being here, that happened. Kingery was horrible. Roman Quinn was terrible so far. And Moniak, all I would say is I don't think they all got enough of a fair shake.
I think they didn't get enough of a fair shake, but I think also there has to be some bigger reason why this happened.
All right. Thanks to my guest today. Ryan Roberts was really good. Paul Hudrick, Jeff Mosher, Bob Wankel, Jeff Kerr, and Frank. Close. Coming up next, Kevin McCormick on the Sixers live from the center at 6:40. Josh has game night leading you into the Sixers and the Thunder. We don't know who's in the lineup for the Sixers, but it looks like Ben Simmons could be back. So keep it locked to find out if something happens between now and the top of the hour. Odubel Herrera is back. He's going to hit 7 to play center field. Good or bad, indifferent. Well, we'll see if it gives him a little shot in the arm tonight offensively because they've been really bad in center. I'm back tomorrow at 2. Thanks to everybody who watched and listened. This is the Sports Bash.